Nobody warns you that a book can smell like a living thing, not in a charming old library way, more like wet goat, smoke, and somebody's anxious sweat. And when people decide a story is dangerous, they don't argue with it. They grab it with dirty fingers, rip it open, and feed it to fire like it owes them money. Someone whispers, horrified, that there's a version of Genesis where Eve isn't the problem. And suddenly, every copy is being hunted like a rat in a pantry. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the locked room in the library. We're stepping into a world where manuscripts disappear, names get scratched out, and a single sentence can get you reassigned to latrine duty for life. We're going to walk right up to the shelf they didn't want touched, and we're going to feel the heat of the brazier waiting nearby. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the 4th century, inside a monastery that smells like damp stone and boiled cabbage. The good news, you have a job indoors. The bad news, indoors still means freezing, smoky, and crawling with tiny roommates. You peel yourself off a straw pallet that has the structural integrity of a neglected dog bed. Your wool blanket is itchy on purpose. It's like the fabric is doing penance at you. Your feet find the floor, and it's immediately a gamble. The stones are either wet or gritty, sometimes both. You don't ask questions. You just accept that your toes are now part of the monastery's ecosystem. Somewhere down the hall, a bell starts clanging with the emotional warmth of a lawsuit. It doesn't ring. It accuses. You sit up, bones cracking, and your breath comes out in little clouds like your body is filing a complaint. You shuffle toward the scriptorium, and the corridor air tastes like yesterday's lamp smoke. There's always smoke. There's always wax. There's always that faint animal funk because everything comes from an animal. The door to the scriptorium sticks because of course it does. Nothing in this building opens smoothly. You shoulder it, and it gives way with a sigh like it's tired of witnessing history. Inside, it's rows of hunched monks at wooden desks. They look like a flock of crows who learn to write. Every surface is stained. Ink, wax, grease from fingers, and the dark smudges of constant use. You smell parchment before you see it. It's not paper, it's skin. You are working in a room full of cleaned, stretched, scraped animal hide, pretending to be polite about it. There's a pot of ink nearby, thick and black. It looks like something you'd use to patch a roof. Somebody's grinding pigment with a stone, and the sound is slow and miserable. The room is quiet, but not peaceful. It's quiet in the way a kitchen gets quiet when someone drops a plate, and everyone waits to see how bad it is. You can hear coughs, sniffing, and the scratch of reeds on skin. Your hands already have ink under the nails. It never leaves. You could wash in the river for a week and still look like you've been doing arts and crafts with a squid. Then you notice the abbot. He's standing too straight, like he wants the room to remember who owns the air. He has that pinched expression of a man who's about to make his stress everyone else's chore. Next to him is a visitor in nicer robes, the kind of cloth that doesn't itch out of spite. The visitor holds a scroll case like it's evidence. The abbot's eyes sweep over the scribes, and they don't quite land on anyone. They skim, like a hawk, deciding which mouse looks most flammable. And then his gaze hits you. You get the smallest gesture. 2 fingers barely emotion, the ancient equivalent of you now. Your stomach drops because nobody gets summoned for fun. You approach, trying to look humble and not terrified, which is a difficult combination. The visitor smells faintly of oil and travel dust. He's been on roads. You can tell because he has the haunted eyes of someone who's seen an inn. The abbot speaks low, like the words themselves could catch. He tells you there are writings that must be removed, not copied, not discussed, removed. You're led past the usual shelves to a door you've walked by 100 times and never opened. It's reinforced with iron bands because nothing says spiritual peace like hardware meant for a prison. The abbot produces a key, not a normal key, a serious key. The kind of key that makes you understand, in your bones, that curiosity has consequences. The lock turns with a thick clunk. Cold air rolls out, carrying the smell of mildew and old leather. It's the scent of a place that hoards secrets and doesn't ventilate. You step into the little room and your eyes adjust to dim light. Shelves line the walls. Some scrolls, some codices, some bundles tied with string that looks like it's been chewed by mice with ambition. And there, tucked behind more acceptable volumes, is a stack that looks handled too often and hidden too quickly. Leather covers, worn corners, margins thick with notes. These aren't decorative. These have been read. You reach for one, and the abbot's voice cuts in like a blade. Not that one. That one. He points to a specific codex, bound tight, as if it's trying to hold itself together. You lift it, and it's heavier than it should be, not just in weight, in consequence. The leather is slick from hands that turn these pages like they were contraband. The visitor produces a wax-sealed order. You don't need to read it to feel what it says. It has the energy of a stamp that ruins your afternoon. They guide you back out, down another corridor, into a smaller room where a brazier squats on the floor. It's already lit. Someone prepared. Of course they prepared. The heat hits your face, and the smell is immediate. Charcoal and hot metal, and that sharp bite of burning oil. The fire is hungry, patient, and absolutely not interested in your feelings. A couple of monks stand nearby with the blank expressions of men assigned to witness unpleasant paperwork. One holds tongs, another holds a bucket of sand, because even in the 4th century, someone's job is, in case this gets out of hand. The abbot nods at the codex in your arms. Your arms tighten around it without permission from your brain. You don't even know all of what's inside, and you already feel protective, like you're holding a small animal. Your thumb slips under the cover, and you glimpse lines of careful writing. Letters packed tight, black ink on pale skin. Someone spent weeks hunched over this. Someone's back hurt for this. Someone's eyesight went bad for this. And somewhere in there, whispered about like a curse, is that version of the beginning. The one where Eve isn't set up as the permanent cosmic scapegoat. The one that makes certain men in certain robes develop a mysterious rash of rage. The abbot clears his throat. A warning sound. The visitor watches your hands, like he's afraid you'll catch ideas. You hold the book over the brazier. The heat kisses the bottom edge. The leather warms. The pages inside tighten, as if the whole thing knows what's about to happen. You hesitate for half a heartbeat. That's all you get, because the abbot's voice goes quiet and final. Do it. Now. And as you stand there, sweating in a cold stone building, holding a book over an open flame, you realize something brutal. In this world, stories don't just live in minds. They live in objects, and objects can be burned. The heat keeps licking the edge of that codex, patient as a tax collector. Your fingers sweat, and the leather gets that soft, warmed feel, like it's already surrendering. The page edges curl inward, just a millimeter, like they're trying to hide their own words. The brazier pops once, a tiny little, "Hey, don't forget I'm fire." Reminder, behind you somebody clears their throat in that monastery way. Not a cough, not a human sound, more like a moral nudge with lungs. The tongs guy shifts his weight, bored, as if he's waiting for you to finish filing paperwork. You can smell the smoke in your hair already before anything's even burned. Your wrists tighten. It's absurd, holding a book like it's a baby over a flame like it's dinner. The room is too hot at your face and too cold at your back, so your body can't even pick a mood. And in the split second before the leather finally catches, you get the nasty little thought, maybe they've done this a lot, but the world is stubborn. Stories are stubborn. Pages get copied before they get burned, tucked into sleeves, smuggled under bread, hidden behind acceptable covers like contraband candy. You can burn an object, sure, but good luck burning everybody's memory. Picture yourself in Ethiopia, 1773. A Scottish explorer named James Bruce has just found something the Western Church insisted didn't exist anymore. You're not in a stone monastery now. You're in highland air that feels thin and sharp, like it's been filtered through rocks. Everything smells different. Wood smoke, coffee, damp earth, and animals that live a little too close to humans. Your boots are dusty, your throat is dry, and your whole body has that long travel ache where your spine feels like it's been negotiated with. James Bruce is the kind of man who looks like he would loudly correct you at a dinner party. Tall, confident, sunburned in places that suggest he's made at least 4 decisions out of spite. He's been hearing rumors, whispers, about books kept in Ethiopian churches, written in Ge'ez, old as bones, treated like living relatives, and the locals are watching him the way you watch a raccoon near your trash. You step into a church that's cool inside, dark in the corners. The light comes in narrow blades through openings, landing on dust that floats like it has nowhere better to be. There's incense, but it can't fully cover the smell of old wood, old cloth, and human presence. A priest moves with slow authority, the kind that doesn't need to shout. And then, because the world enjoys drama, you see it. A manuscript brought out like it's not just a book, but a small, dangerous animal, thick, handwritten. The pages uneven, the ink browned in places like dried tea. The cover looks handled by generations of fingers that weren't clean, because no one in history has ever had truly clean hands. When it opens, it doesn't creak politely. It resists. The spine pulls tight, and the pages give off that sour, sweet smell of old parchment and smoke and time. You lean in, and you feel that jolt in your gut. This is not a cute little devotional. This is a storm in book form. It's Enoch. Not the 2-verse cameo Enoch, the walked with God and was no more guy. This is Enoch with receipts, Enoch with travel logs, Enoch with the kind of cosmic reporting that makes you want to check your door locks. And the reason you're standing here staring at these lines is because in so many places, back in those cold libraries and anxious monasteries, people acted like this book was a ghost. Oh, that doesn't exist. Meanwhile, Ethiopia is like, it's on the shelf. Don't spill coffee on it. Now the scene slides, and you're not a Scottish explorer anymore. You're back in the ancient world, where nights are darker, roads are meaner, and everyone's one bad harvest away from panic. You can feel dust between your teeth. Your hands smell like smoke and animal fat, no matter how much you rub them on your clothes. You're walking under a sky full of stars that look close enough to snag on a spear point. There's no city glow, no soft electric haze, just blackness and the cold, and that constant chorus of insects that never learned when to stop. Somebody points you toward a mountain, Mount Herman. It rises in the distance like a dark shoulder against the night. Even from far away, it has the vibe of a place where you shouldn't whistle. You climb with a small group, and every step is loose rock and scrub that scratches your ankles. Your sandals are not designed for this. Your sandals are barely designed for standing still. Your calves burn, your breath turns sharp, and the air gets colder until it bites the inside of your nose. At the top, the wind is rude. It shoves at you like it's offended you came. The ground is bare in places, and the stones look bleached, like the mountain has been sun-dried for centuries. Someone mutters a name, Watchers, and nobody laughs, because this isn't the kind of story that gets laughter. You feel it before you see it, a pressure in the air, like the sky is holding its breath. Then the clouds, thin, ragged strips, move wrong. Not like weather, like intention. They come down, not drifting, not floating prettily, descending with that heavy certainty of something that doesn't worry about falling. And suddenly, you're standing on a mountain with beings that don't look like hungry men or tired animals or anything your brain has a draw for. They're called Watchers because they watch, which sounds fine until you realize watching is never neutral. Their presence has weight, like standing too close to a furnace you didn't light. You get the sense that if they spoke your name, it would feel like being grabbed by the spine. They gather, and there's a leader, Shemihaza, who looks like he's about to make a group decision that ruins everyone's lives. The mood is a mix of desire and panic, like teenagers with power tools. They stare down toward the human settlements, and you understand the problem immediately. They don't just notice humans, they want them. Somebody says it out loud. They want wives, human wives. And the second the words hang in the air, you feel the shape of the disaster forming. Because this isn't romance. This is not a gentle, forbidden love. This is cosmic beings making plans on a mountaintop, like it's a getaway weekend. And every plan sounds fine until you remember. They're not supposed to be here doing this, so they make an oath. Together, on the mountain, swearing they'll do it, and none of them will back out and leave the others holding the blame. It's the ancient version of a group chat that should never have been created. Someone says, basically, if we're doing this, we're all doing this. And the wind howls like it wants to unsubscribe. Your skin prickles because oaths have weight in this world, and this one lands like a stone dropped into deep water. Down below, the villagers don't know what's coming. Women are drawing water, kneading dough, brushing dust off their children's hair. There's the smell of cooking smoke, animal dung, and that sour tang of fermentation from someone's jar of beer. Normal life. Vulnerable life. Then the Watchers arrive like a sudden change in the laws of nature. They don't ask permission. They take. And the shock of it is how quickly it becomes normal. Like the world just shrugs and makes room for a new kind of wrong. You see the women's faces. Fear first, then confusion, then the numb look people get when something too big grabs their life. You hear the village dogs going berserk, which is fair, because the dogs have excellent instincts and no theology. Men shout and then fall quiet, because what do you do with something you can't wrestle? The air tastes like dust and panic, and it doesn't stop with wives. Of course it doesn't. Once the Watchers are down here, they start handing out knowledge like party favors. Azazel shows up with metallurgy, swords, knives, shields. The smell of hot metal and charcoal fills the air as men learn to pull glowing iron from fire and beat it into shapes meant for bodies. You can practically hear the future wars warming up their throats. Another watcher teaches the cutting of roots, the mixing of herbs. Medicine, sure, but also poisons, because every helpful thing comes with a shadow. Someone shows people how to read the stars in a way that makes the nights feel less like mystery and more like a locked system. And someone, because of course, teaches cosmetics and ornaments. Now you're watching a woman look into a piece of polished metal, smearing pigment around her eyes. It's not silly, it's intimate. It's the human urge to shape the face the world gets to see, handed to them by something that isn't supposed to care about faces at all. The village changes, not overnight, but like milk turning. Men start standing a little differently when they carry weapons they didn't have last season. People start whispering about secret knowledge the way they whisper about secret lovers. The nights feel sharper, as if darkness itself has learned new tricks. And then the children come, the ones that aren't really just children. They're big, not tall for their age. Big in the way a problem is big. They grow fast, eat constantly, and their hunger feels wrong, like a hole opening in the world. You watch one of them take bread meant for 3 families and eat it like it's nothing. You watch another grab a goat by the back legs and swing it like it's a toy. The goat screams, the villagers flinch, and nobody steps in. The air smells like sweat and fear and animals pressed too close together. The Nephilim don't stay satisfied with grain and milk and meat. They drain the stores, they strip the fields, they empty the barns until there's nothing but dust and bitter straw. And when the food runs out, they don't politely starve. They turn on the people. You hear the first story like a rumor, and then you hear it again and again until it's not rumor anymore. You see blood on the ground that isn't from an animal. You see a man missing, and no one wants to say his name out loud. You see a mother pulling her child indoors at noon, bolting the door like wood can stop a giant. The world feels suddenly fragile, like pottery left too close to the edge of a table. Violence spreads the way fire spreads in dry brush. Men use the new weapons on each other. Old grudges get upgraded into fresh wounds. The air that used to be filled with cooking and livestock is now threaded with the metallic stink of blood. Even the animals go strange. There's talk of creatures breeding wrong, of boundaries breaking down everywhere you look, and you can feel it in your own body. Sleep doesn't come easily because the night feels watched, not watched like guarded, watched like hunted. So someone finally does what humans always do when things get unbearable. They cry out, not politely, not formally, from the gut, from the dirt, from the raw nerve of desperation. And into this mess steps Enoch, not as a warrior, not as a king, as a scribe. You can almost smell him before you see him. Ink, sweat, sun-warmed linen. His hands are stained. His eyes are tired in a way that says he's read too much and slept too little. He's the kind of man who listens more than he talks, which is a terrible job in a world full of shouting. The watchers find him because they're out of options. The giants are out of control. The earth is loud with violence. And suddenly, these mighty beings are doing something pathetic, asking a human to help them write a petition. You sit nearby as they crowd around him. It's a bad meeting. Too many bodies, not enough air. Their voices sound like wind through cracks in stone, and your ears ring trying to hold it. They want mercy. They want forgiveness. They want someone to deliver their request upward because they're not welcome to deliver it themselves anymore. So Enoch takes the message, and the night he goes to sleep, sleep doesn't behave normally. It grabs him. One moment you're lying on the ground with a cloak that smells like sheep and old smoke. The next moment, the world tilts, and you're moving, pulled, lifted, carried, without your legs doing anything. Your stomach drops like you missed a step in the dark. The air turns thin and sharp, like breathing cold metal. You're brought to a place that doesn't feel built by hands. Walls of crystal or ice, or something that looks like ice but burns the eyes. The floor is hard and bright, like walking on a frozen lake where you can't see the water beneath. Everything echoes, not just sound but presence. There are rivers there, not of water, of fire. They flow like liquid, bright and living, and they make heat without smoke. Your face feels scorched, yet the air around you stays cold, because apparently the rules have been fired from their jobs. You try not to stare, because staring feels like leaning too close to an open oven with your eyelids. There are beings there too, messengers, attendants, things with too many eyes, too much light. You can't decide where to look because everything is too much. Your heart thuds like it's trying to escape your ribs and file a complaint somewhere safer. And Enoch, human, ink-stained Enoch, is expected to stand there and speak. He's shown places that make your skin crawl. A prison for the watchers, deep and dark, like a pit dug into the fabric of reality. You see chains, not cute little metal links, but heavy restraints that feel like concepts made solid. The air there is stale and bitter, like fear has been sweating into the walls for centuries. You hear the watchers' names like they're being read off a sentence. You see their faces, beautiful in the way storms are beautiful, and just as safe to approach. They don't look defiant now. They look cornered. And Enoch, because someone has to be the messenger, delivers the words, "No mercy, no forgiveness, not for this." It lands like a door slamming in a silent house. You can almost feel the shockwave in your teeth. The watcher's grief is not gentle. It's huge, useless, and late, like a man apologizing after the house has already burned down. Now Enoch is taken farther, upward, through layers of sky that aren't just sky, through places where light behaves like substance. You pass storehouses, snow, hail, winds, stacked and kept like supplies. It's bizarrely practical, like the universe has a warehouse district. You catch sight of stars that look wrong, not the friendly pinpricks you grew up with. These stars feel like beings, like prisoners, like watchers of their own. Some are bound, some are out of place, and the air around them feels tense, like a room full of people pretending not to argue. You're shown the movements of sun and moon like they're on tracks. There's a rhythm to it, an order that feels comforting for about 3 seconds. Then you realize the comfort is fragile, and you've already seen how easily boundaries get broken. Even the heavens have rules because someone, somewhere, knows what happens when rules fail. At one point, you're brought near a tree. It's not in a cute little garden with birds singing. It stands alone, heavy with scent, like sweetness and spice and something sharp underneath. Its presence feels like a promise and a warning at the same time. You don't touch it. You don't even step too close. Your whole body knows you are not the kind of creature that gets to be casual around holy things. It's not fear exactly. It's awareness, like standing near the edge of a cliff and feeling your bones go quiet. Then, because the journey isn't finished until you're thoroughly overwhelmed, you're shown the earth from above. It looks small, but not in a cute way. Small, like vulnerable. Small, like easy to wipe clean. You see the places where the giants stomped, the valleys scarred by violence, the rivers that carry away what people don't want to name, and you feel that sick little twist. All this chaos started with beings who were supposed to watch, deciding they wanted more than watching. Enoch is sent back down with words that don't sound like comfort. They sound like verdicts, the kind you can't bargain with. The flood is coming, not because someone woke up cranky, because the earth has become a butcher shop and the blood won't stop, because the giants are a hunger that can't be fed, because the Watchers taught humans how to sharpen their cruelty into tools. You're back on the ground again, and suddenly the air feels thick, wet, heavy. Clouds gather in ways that make farmers frown. The wind smells like rain long before rain arrives, like the sky is loading a weapon. And the weirdest part is how ordinary people still look while doom gets scheduled overhead. Someone is still baking bread. Someone is still arguing with a neighbor about a boundary stone. A child is still chasing a chicken, and the chicken is still outraged about it. But you've seen the other side now. You've seen that there are prisons in the unseen world. You've seen that fire can flow like water. You've seen that cosmic beings can make choices that wreck everything below them. So when you think back to that monastery brazier, the leather warming, the pages curling, you finally get why hands would shake. Because a book like Enoch doesn't just add a little flavor to Genesis. It turns the universe into a place crowded with dangerous neighbors. Angels aren't just tidy messengers with good manners. They're complicated. They want things, they rebel. They regret it too late. Evil isn't only a snake and a bite of fruit. It's knowledge handed over without wisdom. It's power without restraint. It's hunger that grows bigger than the world meant to hold. And that's a lot to leave lying around in a nice, organized library. That's the kind of story that makes people look at the sky differently. That makes the night feel populated. That makes the idea of order feel like something maintained, not guaranteed. So you understand the urge to shove it behind a locked door, to cough politely and say, "That book? Lost." To pretend the universe is simpler than it is, because simpler lets you sleep. But Enoch, ink-stained, stubborn Enoch, doesn't stay burned. It survives in languages you weren't taught, in churches you weren't told to look at, in manuscripts carried through heat and war and damp storage rooms that smell like goat and smoke. It waits. And now you're holding it open again, feeling that old chill crawl up your arms. Because once you've stood on Mount Hermon in your mind, once you've heard the Watchers swear their oath in the wind, it's hard to go back to a clean, quiet world. And the night is not done giving you strange books. Not even close. But Thomas wasn't the only gospel they buried in that jar. There were others, and some of them would make your Sunday school teacher faint. The sun is higher now, and it's mean about it. You're in Egypt, 1945, in that dry, bright emptiness where the horizon looks like it's been sanded down. Your shirt sticks to your spine anyway, because heat finds water and bullies it. Your hands are already gritty, and the grit has opinions. You've got a mattock in your hands, not a cute little garden trowel. A real metal-headed, bone-jarring tool that makes your elbows feel 30 years older every time it hits dirt. You're digging for fertilizer, not the kind that comes in a clean bag with a smiling cartoon plant on it. You're digging for sebach, old, crumbled mud brick from ancient ruins, mixed with ash and composted history. It's basically the Earth's attic dust, and it smells like sun-baked clay, dry rot, and whatever 1,000 years of goats decided to contribute. Every swing lands with a dull thunk. The ground is stubborn. Your shoulders burn. Somewhere nearby, a fly lands on your cheek like it pays rent. And you're not alone. There's another man with you, maybe your brother, maybe your cousin, because families out here are tangled like fishing nets. He wipes his forehead with the back of his hand and smears dirt across it, which is somehow worse than sweat. Both of you keep glancing around, because these hills aren't just hills. They're ruins, old places, the kind people whisper about, the kind your mother told you not to mess with unless you want to bring something home that doesn't eat food. The mattock hits something that isn't dirt. The sound changes, a sharper clack, like you just knocked on a door. You freeze. Because even if you don't believe in spirits, your body still believes in consequences. You scrape carefully, fingers digging into packed soil, and you feel it. Smooth, curved pottery. A jar, big, sealed. The kind that looks like it's been waiting, patiently, for a terrible idea. Your brother leans in, eyes narrowed, and you both have the same thought at the same time. Treasure. Not a cute coin. Treasure like bracelets. Treasure like gold. Treasure like the kind of thing that makes you forget every warning you've ever heard about cursed objects. You pry at the seal. The clay is stubborn, and it flakes in little chips that bite into your fingernails. The jar doesn't open gracefully. It resists like it has a job. When it finally gives, the sound is wrong. Not a satisfying pop, more like a dry crack that echoes inside your ribs. The smell that comes out is ancient, not mystical, just old. A trapped, stale breath of leather dust, and that sour, sweet note of something organic that dried a long time ago and never got a proper goodbye. You peer in. No coins, no jewelry. Books. Leather-bound lumps stacked inside like someone packed a lunch for the apocalypse. They're codices, pages bound on one side, thick and rectangular, the covers dark with age. The leather has that worn sheen like it's been handled by anxious hands before. For a second, you just stare, because this is the worst kind of treasure. Gold buys bread. Gold buys safety. Gold buys your mother's approval. Books buy trouble. Books buy priests showing up with tight mouths and soft threats. Books buy the kind of attention you don't want in a village where everybody knows everybody's business, including what you did 3 years ago with that goat you swear you didn't steal. You lift one out. It's heavier than it should be, like the words themselves have weight. Dust shakes loose and floats in the air, glittering in the sun for half a second before it drops again, embarrassed. Your fingers slide over the cover. The leather is dry, almost brittle, and it has tiny cracks like an old man's hands. You open it a little, and the spine makes a faint complaint. Inside, pages. Not paper like you know. Papyrus, layered and pressed, with ink that's held on through centuries like it's stubborn out of spite. The letters aren't Greek to you. They're Coptic. They might as well be bird tracks. Your brother makes a small noise in his throat, halfway between disappointment and alarm. You both know what this means. You found something that belongs to someone powerful, even if they're dead. Sometimes dead people still have reach. You wrap the books up. You hurry, because the sky is too open, and you suddenly feel watched by everything. Vultures, neighbors, God, whatever lives in old jars. The bundle bumps against your hip as you walk, and each thump feels like a warning. Back home, the house is dim and cool compared to the desert, and it smells like smoke, bread, and bodies living too close together. A pot simmers somewhere. A child coughs in the corner with the wet, scraping sound that makes you flinch. Your mother sees the bundle and her face does that immediate shift mothers have, from tired to, "What have you done?" No words yet, just a look. You show her the books. You open one, careful, like it might bite. She leans close, squints, and her mouth tightens, because she can't read it either, but she can read trouble in any language. There's a pause where nobody breathes right. You can hear the tiny sounds of the house. the crackle of embers, the scrape of someone's sandal on hard earth, the faint buzz of a fly trapped against a wall. Then the practical part of life barges in. Dinner needs cooking, the oven needs fuel, and papyrus, dry, thin, ready to catch, looks an awful lot like kindling to someone who has spent their whole life making fire out of whatever they can find. You catch yourself reaching for a loose page, not even meaning harm, just thinking, this would burn nicely. And there it is, that old monastery moment again. Hands over a flame, words hovering at the edge of becoming smoke. Somebody stops you. Maybe it's your mother snapping your name like a slap. Maybe it's your brother, suddenly pale, suddenly respectful. Maybe it's the little chill that crawls up your arms when you realize someone hid these on purpose. Not dropped, not lost, hidden, buried in a sealed jar like a body. You don't know who did it yet, but you can feel their panic through the centuries. A person with ink-stained fingers, heart pounding, shoving books into a container because footsteps were coming. A person looking at fire and choosing sand instead. Days pass. News travels the way it always does, fast, crooked, wearing different clothes each time it arrives. Someone hears you found old books. Someone tells someone else. And eventually, the books leave your house, because the safest place for trouble is always somebody else's hands. Now the scene shifts again, and you're not the farmer anymore. You're the one who finally gets to open the book with cleanish fingers and a beating heart. The cover is in front of you, leather dark as old tea. The pages smell like dry grass and dust and a faint animal tang, because everything in this world either came from an animal or got stored near one. You open to the beginning. There's no genealogy, no manger, no angel choir, no nervous Joseph trying to look normal while everybody stares. Just a sentence that lands like a whisper in a locked room. These are the secret sayings, spoken by the living Jesus, written down by Didymos Judas Thomas. You stare at that, and your eyebrows go up on their own. Because secret sayings is already a mood. It's not good news for all people. It's, I hope you brought a flashlight and a lawyer. You turn the page, and right away Thomas doesn't give you a story. It gives you a voice, short lines, sayings, little verbal stones you can't swallow and can't spit out. No water into wine, no demons screaming in the synagogue, no crowds, no boats, no neat timeline where you can point and say, okay, this happened, then this happened. Just Jesus, speaking like a man who refuses to answer a question the way you asked it. You read the first saying, and it's not a greeting, it's a challenge. Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. You pause, because that is not a warm welcome. That is a riddle with a threat attached. It's like being handed a locked box and being told, if you figure out the combination, you get to keep breathing. No pressure, just eternity on the line. You keep going because your brain is already hooked. The kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. You blink at the page. Inside you, outside you. You look down at your own hands, like you might find a tiny kingdom tucked under your fingernail. All you see is dust, and whatever you ate earlier, stuck in the creases of your skin. If there's a kingdom in there, it needs better signage. The sayings keep coming, quick and quick, sharp. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That one sits on your chest for a second, because it's not about armies or temples or priests or sacrifices. It's about you, your insides, your hidden self. And suddenly, you understand why people got nervous around a book like this. It doesn't send you to a building. It doesn't even tell you which direction to face. It points at your ribcage like, good luck in there. You flip ahead, and there are sayings you recognize, like finding familiar furniture in a stranger's house. A sower went out, took a handful of seeds, and scattered. Some fell on the road, some on rock, some in thorns, some in good soil. You can almost relax. This one feels like home. Then Thomas tweaks it, and the comfort slides away a little. The words feel raw, less polished, like you're hearing it in a small room instead of a big crowd. You keep reading. The kingdom is like a mustard seed, the smallest of seeds. When it falls on cultivated soil, it produces a great plant, and birds make nests in its branches. Okay, fine. A tiny thing becomes a big thing. But Thomas doesn't linger on the cozy image. Thomas keeps moving, like it doesn't care whether you're keeping up. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose made of riddles. You take one mouthful and immediately choke, but you're still thirsty. Some sayings are almost gentle. Come to me, for my yoke is easy, and my lordship is mild, and you will find rest for yourselves. You feel your shoulders drop a fraction. Your whole body wants that sentence. Rest, ease, mild lordship, which is not a phrase any government has ever offered you. Then, without warning, Thomas throws something at your face. Split a piece of wood. I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. You stare, because suddenly Jesus is not sitting on a hillside. He's everywhere, in the firewood pile, in the stones under your feet, in the stuff you stub your toe on at night. It's comforting for half a second. Then it becomes unsettling, because it means there isn't a single place you can go where he isn't already present, watching you try to act normal. You read another one, and it's even stranger. If the flesh came into being because of spirit, it is a marvel. If spirit came into being because of the body, it is a marvel of marvels. But I marvel at how this great wealth has come to dwell in this poverty. You can feel your brain trying to chew it like tough bread. It keeps working at the edges, looking for a soft spot. Wealth in poverty, something glorious living inside something plain, a treasure hidden in a jar maybe. Your fingers turn pages. The papyrus rasps softly, like dry leaves. Some sayings sound like they're trying to get you lost on purpose. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, then you will enter the kingdom. You pause mid-page, because your mind immediately makes a face. What does that even mean? Make the two one. You picture yourself trying to fold reality like laundry, inside-out shirts, outside in hearts, everything matched and paired and smoothed. It sounds beautiful, until you realize it's also impossible. And then you realize that impossibility is part of the point. Thomas is not giving you a checklist. It's giving you a doorway that only opens if you stop trying to carry your ego through it. Another saying pops up, plain and blunt. Become passers-by. That's it. No explanation. Just don't cling. You can almost hear a desert wind behind the words, dry and restless. Nothing here is permanent. Not houses, not bodies, not kingdoms made of stone. And then Thomas, just to keep you on edge, serves you something sharp enough to cut. Blessed is the lion that a human will eat, so the lion becomes human. And cursed is the human whom a lion will eat, and the lion becomes human. You whisper, what? Out loud, because your mouth can't help itself. Somewhere a fly buzzes, a floorboard creaks. Life goes on, completely unimpressed by your theological confusion. You read it again. Lion eaten by human. Lion becomes human. Human eaten by lion. Lion becomes human. So either way, the lion wins. That's what it feels like at first. The lion is out here getting promoted no matter what. And you sit there thinking, this is either the deepest wisdom you've ever heard or the weirdest fortune cookie ever written. Thomas keeps talking. Do not be concerned from morning until evening and from evening until morning about what you will wear. You can feel the sting of it because you've absolutely worried about what you'll wear. Even in this ancient world, clothing is status, protection, survival. A good cloak is basically healthcare. Thomas doesn't care. Thomas is asking you to let go of the daily panic that rules your thoughts like a cranky landlord. Then you turn the page and find a line that makes your stomach do a little flip. The Pharisees and the scribes have taken the keys of knowledge and hidden them. They have not entered, nor have they allowed those who wish to enter to do so. You can practically hear the doors slamming, keys hidden, people blocked. Because now it's not just mystical poetry. Now it's a complaint about gatekeeping. And it's aimed at the kind of people who love gates. You picture a man with tidy robes and a tidy beard standing in front of a doorway like a bouncer. No, not you. Not you either. Do you have an appointment with holiness? And Thomas is pointing right at him saying, give me the keys. You feel that old monastery cough in your bones, that moral nudge with lung sound, the sound of someone in authority realizing a text has teeth. Because this Jesus isn't building an institution. He isn't handing out titles. He isn't setting up a chain of command with a nice clear org chart. He's talking like the kingdom is immediate, like it's accessible, like it's not owned by anyone. That's a dangerous kind of holy. You flip again, and there's a saying that's almost funny in how blunt it is. If you fast, you will bring sin upon yourselves. If you pray, you will be condemned. If you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. You stare, because that is not what you expected. Fasting, prayer, charity. Those are the classic trio, the wholesome religious starter pack. Thomas just walked in and knocked the whole tray onto the floor. It's not saying those things are bad the way a lazy person would say it. It's saying they can go wrong, turn into performance, turn into ego, turn into a way of buying points. It's like being told your spiritual resume is actually a liability. Then Thomas slides into something almost tender. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. It repeats like it wants to be remembered, like it wants to be held close. You think about the farmer again, about the jar, about the hands that hid these pages. Someone believed there was something within that needed saving. Not just a message about Jesus, but a message that could wake something up in you. And that's when the disorientation really hits, because you've been trained by sermons, by paintings, by the way stories usually work, to expect Jesus to do something, to heal, to walk, to die, to rise. Thomas gives you none of that. No cross, no empty tomb. Not even a quick cameo of a miracle to keep the crowd entertained. Just words stacked like stones. You realize you're holding a gospel that refuses to distract you with spectacle. It won't let you stand at the back of the crowd and watch wonders happen to someone else. It keeps pointing back at you. Your understanding, your sight, your inner life. It's the spiritual equivalent of someone taking your phone away and saying, no scrolling. You're alone with your own soul now. Some sayings sound like they're meant to sting. Why do you wash the outside of the cup? Do you not understand that the one who made the inside is also the one who made the outside? You glance at the cup nearest you. It's clay. It's chipped. It has a ring of old drink inside because nobody in history has ever fully cleaned anything. And still, you understand the point. You can scrub your behavior until it shines, and still be rotten with fear and pride underneath. Thomas doesn't want you polished. Thomas wants you whole. A little later, you hit a line that makes you sit up straighter. The kingdom is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. That one is quiet. No metaphors about lions. No impossible instructions about making two into one. Just the idea that you're walking through holy ground every day, stepping over it, ignoring it, complaining about your sandals, missing it completely. It's beautiful. It's also infuriating. Because if the kingdom is spread out upon the earth, then why is everything so awful? Why do children cough in corners? Why do soldiers stomp through villages? Why do the powerful always seem to have the best bread? Thomas doesn't answer. Thomas is not here to soothe you with a neat explanation. It hands you a lamp and tells you to open your eyes. You can feel why bishops and teachers would read this and get that tight, thin-lipped look. Not because it's dark, because it's free. It makes Jesus sound like he's not running a club with membership requirements. It makes him sound like he's waking people up in the middle of their ordinary lives, out by the woodpile, under stones, inside their own chests. And once people start believing they can meet God without asking permission, well, doors get less important, keys get less valuable, gatekeepers start to sweat. You imagine a church leader hearing someone quote Thomas in a courtyard, a regular person, not trained, not authorized, not wearing the right robes. The kingdom is inside you, they say, like it's nothing, like it belongs to them. And the leader's stomach drops because he can feel the ground shifting under his feet. Not because he hates God, because he's built his whole life around being the official distributor of access. Now access is everywhere, under stones, in wood, in the mouth of a farmer who can't read Coptic, but can repeat a line he heard once. You turn more pages. Some sayings feel like they were spoken with a tired smile. Some feel like they were spoken with eyes that see too far into you. And there's a constant sense of hiddenness. Not hidden like a conspiracy. Hidden like a treasure that only matters if you dig. That jar in the desert starts to feel less like an accident and more like a perfect symbol. A message sealed up because it was too volatile to leave on the shelf. You close the cover for a second. The leather makes a soft thump that sounds like the end of a secret. Your fingers linger on it. You can feel the dryness of the binding, the little cracks. You can almost feel the hands that made it, and the hands that buried it, and the hands that never got to unbury it. And then you open it again, because of course you do. Curiosity is the oldest hunger on earth. You read more. Jesus says the last will be first, but not in the triumphant, crowd-pleasing way you're used to. He says it like it's a law of reality, like gravity. He talks about seeking and finding and being troubled, and then marveling, and then reigning. Troubled first, marveling later. That feels honest. That feels like somebody who knows what it costs to wake up. Outside, the desert wind keeps doing what it does. It drags sand across stone. It erases footprints. It makes the world look untouched even when it's full of buried things. You think about those books sitting in darkness for 1600 years, not read, not quoted, not argued over in public, just waiting quietly, while empires changed hands above them like a stolen cloak. And now they're open again, not in a cathedral, not in a sanctioned reading, in your hands. You feel that small thrill of doing something slightly forbidden, not because you're trying to be rebellious, because you're touching a strand of Christian memory that someone tried to cut. You set the Gospel of Thomas down gently, like it might bruise. Your mind keeps turning the sayings over anyway, unable to leave them alone. No miracles, no scenes, Just Jesus' voice, stripped down to riddles and demands and strange comfort. It's unsettling. It's compelling. It's like hearing a familiar song played in a minor key and realizing you never knew it could sound like that. And the jar isn't empty yet, because buried beside this quiet, cryptic Jesus, there's another book with Thomas in the title. Only that one doesn't give you riddles. It gives you a child with mud on his hands and absolute menace in his eyes, and the power of God behaving like a tantrum waiting to happen. Your thumb slides off the Gospel of Thomas like it's warm, not physically warm. Warm the way a live wire is warm. You stare at the stack beside it. Same leathery covers. Same dried out dusty animal smell. Same someone buried this like it was illegal energy. You pick up the other one with Thomas attached to it. Because of course you do. Curiosity has you by the ankle. The cover feels tacky in places, like old oil from hands that kept turning these pages with nervous fingers. You open it, and the papyrus gives that dry little rasp, like it's clearing its throat to say something regrettable. No riddles this time, no gentle parables, no kingdom within you. This one starts with a child, and immediately you can tell, this child is not here to share. He's here to ruin a neighborhood. You're in a village now because your mind can't help it. Not a postcard village, a real one, cramped and loud, where the walls are sun-baked mud brick and every corner smells like wet straw, old smoke, and somebody's goat making a personal choice. The ground is dusty until it's mud, and it's never the good kind of mud. It's the kind mixed with animal droppings, kitchen slop, and mystery liquids you don't want identified. Kids are everywhere. Kids with bare feet and runny noses, yelling like tiny prophets of chaos. A rooster is offended by something and will not stop announcing it. And there he is, Jesus, not 30, not teaching on a hillside, 5, maybe 6. A little boy with sun-browned skin, dark hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, and the kind of calm expression you see on someone holding a secret they absolutely plan to use. It's the Sabbath, which, in this world, is not a relaxing weekend vibe. It's rules, it's boundaries, it's everyone watching everyone else like unpaid security guards. You can feel the village's tense quiet under the ordinary noise. Work stops. Bread still gets eaten. Everybody still breathes. But you do not publicly get creative, especially not with mud. Naturally, this is when the child decides to do arts and crafts. You follow him down to the edge of a little stream or puddle, because villages always have one sad water source that everybody shares with the donkeys. The bank is slick. The water smells like algae and warmed over life. Jesus squats down, sleeves pushed up, and starts scooping wet clay in his hands. It squelches between his fingers. He's not making a pot. He's not making something useful. He's making little birds. 12 of them, because he's apparently already committed to symbolism at kindergarten age. They're lumpy, thumb-pressed lumps, with beaks that look like accidents. The other kids are watching, because kids always watch. The adults are watching too, because adults in small villages treat boredom like a sport. Someone clears their throat. A man steps forward with that tight, sour look of a person who loves rules because rules make him feel tall. He points at the muddy hands, the bird shapes, the puddle, the Sabbath air itself. "What are you doing?" he demands, because nobody has invented inside voice yet. You hold still. You feel the collective village flinch, like everyone's bracing for a scolding and an awkward apology. Jesus looks up. His eyes are calm. His hands are filthy. His expression says very clearly, "I have heard your complaint, and I will be responding in a way that escalates everything." He claps. Not a polite clap, a sharp smack of wet hands. The clay birds twitch. They shiver like something waking up. And then they lift off. Mud becomes wings. Lumps become bodies. 12 little birds hop, flap, and launch into the air, spraying droplets of dirty water like they've just been promoted into creation. The children scream. One laughs so hard he falls backward into the mud and immediately regrets it. An older woman makes a noise halfway between a prayer and an accusation. The rule-loving man's face does something amazing. It tries to be angry and terrified at the same time, and it can't choose. Because what do you even say? "Excuse me, small child. You are violating Sabbath regulations by casually animating wildlife." The birds vanish into the sky, and the village is left staring at a puddle and a boy who's now rubbing his muddy hands together like he just finished a craft project at school. You think, for one blessed second, that maybe that's it. Maybe it's a weird little miracle story with a mischievous grin. No, this is only the beginning of the neighborhood suffering. Because the problem with a child who can do that is that he's still a child. He still has the emotional regulation of a tired cat. Only with the power of God sitting in his chest like a loaded slingshot. A little later, you're back among the houses where the alleyways are narrow and the air tastes like dust and cooked onions. Kids are running, because kids treat the entire world like a racetrack. One boy, just another village boy, sweaty and loud, bumps into Jesus. Not a dramatic shove, just a collision. It's the kind of thing that ends with, "Watch where you're going," and maybe a bruise. Jesus turns slowly. You can almost hear the moment the village's mood shifts. It's subtle, a hush underneath the noise, because every kid in every age knows the look of someone who's about to do something mean. It's a universal language. Jesus speaks, not yelling, not even crying, just a short sentence, flat as a stone, and the boy who bumped him drops. He crumples like his strings were cut. Dust puffs up around his body, a soft little cloud that hangs there like the world is trying to pretend that this isn't happening. The other children freeze. One kid's mouth is open and no sound comes out. A dog backs away, ears down, deciding it has somewhere else to be. Adults rush in. Sandals slap hard earth. A woman screams the kind of scream that makes your stomach go cold. A father pushes through, face red, eyes wild. He looks at his son. He looks at the small boy standing there, still calm, still breathing, still somehow the center of the air itself. People start talking. Voices pile up like stones. Accusations, fear. The frantic need to make this make sense. And because humans cannot help themselves, someone does the thing people always do when something awful happens. They complain to the parents. Joseph gets dragged into it, because Joseph is the local adult male assigned to this situation. He arrives with sawdust on his clothes, because the man is always working, always trying to keep food on the table, always one disaster away from a headache that lasts a week. Mary is there too, and her face is tight. Not angry, not surprised, just tired in a way that feels ancient. The parents of the dead boy are wailing now. A neighbor is shouting. Someone points at Jesus like pointing will fix it. "You need to control him," a man snaps at Joseph like Joseph has a leash. Joseph looks down at Jesus, and you can feel it. That impossible parental moment where you want to correct your child, but your child is this. Joseph crouches a little, trying to speak softly, because that's what you do with kids. You lower your voice, you reason, you bargain. Except bargaining with this kid is like bargaining with lightning. Joseph's mouth moves. You can't hear every word over the noise, but you catch the shape of it. Why would you do that? Don't do that. We don't do that. Jesus looks back up. His expression barely changes. He's not sorry. He's offended. Like he's been inconvenienced by being treated like a child when he knows what he is. The adults keep yelling, because adults love yelling when they're scared. Somebody, maybe the dead boy's father, maybe a self-appointed village referee, steps forward and says the thing everybody is thinking. This child is dangerous. As if Joseph hadn't noticed. A couple of men go to the elders, because there are always elders, and elders always sit where the shade is best. The elders arrive with their serious faces on, looking official, like officialness can wrestle this situation into submission. Someone gestures wildly. Someone cries again. Someone starts describing what happened, and the story is already getting bigger in the telling. He cursed him. He killed him. He breathed, and the boy fell. The elders look at Jesus, and you can see them trying to treat him like a normal problem. A normal problem has a normal solution. A fine, a public apology, a family shaming. This is not a normal problem. One of the men, irritated beyond wisdom, points at Jesus and basically says, stop it. That's the vibe. That's the whole strategy. Jesus turns his head toward the man, and you can feel the air tighten again, like a rope pulling taut. The man keeps talking, scolding now, voice rising, because scolding is what adults do when they don't know what else to do. And then his words sputter. His eyes go wide, unfocused. He reaches up, blinking hard, and then he starts yelling, not at Jesus, but at the world, because he can't see. He's rubbing his eyes with the heels of his hands, like he can scrub away the darkness. He's stumbling, arms out, grabbing at shoulders. People leap back because they don't want to catch whatever this is. A woman makes a choking sound like she swallowed her own fear. Now there are two kinds of screaming: grief screaming and panic screaming. Jesus stands there in the middle of it, small and still, while adults whirl around like frightened animals. You want to tell him to stop. You also want to move away from him, because your body is having a perfectly reasonable survival response. This is a 5-year-old with the ability to end you emotionally, socially, physically, spiritually, with a sentence. It's like living next door to a toddler holding the sun, and nobody can take it away. The village tries a new tactic, because humans will always try a new tactic. They find a teacher. Because surely, education will solve this. Surely the correct amount of alphabet will turn a cosmic menace into a polite little boy. A teacher approaches with a writing tablet and a stylus. His beard is oiled. His robe is cleanish. He smells like someone who has access to soap more often than the average person. He has that confident look of a man who has corrected hundreds of children and believes deeply in his own ability to control a room. He greets Joseph. He nods at Mary. He looks down at Jesus and smiles with professional patience. "Come," he says, "and learn." Jesus follows, because Jesus is apparently in the mood to let this happen. You sit with them, because now you're trapped in the social horror of a parent-teacher meeting that might end in metaphysical injury. They go to the teacher's little school space, which is basically a shaded corner with a bench and a wall. Other kids are there, legs swinging, faces smeared with whatever they ate. One has a scab on his knee the size of a small country. The teacher holds up the tablet and begins. "Alpha," he says. Jesus watches him. The teacher smiles wider, encouraged. "Say it," he prompts, voice warm but firm. Jesus doesn't answer. The teacher taps the tablet lightly, like tapping will coax obedience out of the air. "Alpha," he repeats. Jesus finally speaks. calmly. With the tone of someone correcting a mistake, he asks the teacher something sharp. You don't catch every word, but you catch the humiliation in the teacher's face as it lands. The teacher blinks, surprised. He tries to recover, tries to assert control. He moves on, like a man stepping carefully around a snake. Beta, he says. Jesus looks at him like the teacher is a child who wandered into a conversation meant for adults. He answers again. And it's worse. The teacher's confidence begins to leak out of him. It's visible, like sweat. The other children are watching with huge eyes, because this is better than any festival. This is the best entertainment they've ever had. The teacher's cheeks flush. He tries again, raising his voice now. Say the letters. Jesus tilts his head, and then, like a door swinging open, Jesus speaks at length. Not babbling, not stumbling kid talk. Words with weight. Words that make the teacher's mouth fall slightly open. It's like watching a child stand up and start giving your doctor a performance review. The teacher's pride gets wounded. You can see it happen. He reaches for the only tool he has left. Authority. He lifts his hand. Not to kill him. Not to beat him senseless. Just to smack him the way adults smack children when they've run out of options and want the world to snap back into place. His palm never lands, because Jesus looks at him, and the teacher jerks back as if he just touched a hot pot. His face contorts. His body stiffens. He makes a strangled sound and collapses onto the ground, grabbing his chest. The children shriek and scatter like startled pigeons. A mother rushes in, hears the commotion, sees the teacher on the ground, and immediately decides she has always hated this location. Joseph steps forward, hands out, not sure what to do with them. Because what do you do when your child just knocked a grown man flat with a look? The teacher groans, alive but wrecked, eyes squeezed shut, breathing like he ran a race. Jesus stands over him, quiet, not triumphant, just unmoved. You get the sense this is all deeply annoying to him, like he's being forced to attend lessons that are beneath him. Joseph hauls Jesus away, because what else can Joseph do? He drags him home through the narrow lanes where everyone is now, pressed into doorways, pretending they were not spying. You pass cooking fires. You pass laundry hanging stiff with dust. You pass a man sweeping his little patch of ground, pushing aside animal droppings, old straw, and that grey ash that gets into everything. Every face you pass has the same look, fear wrapped in politeness. The village version of, we respect your family and would also like you to move. At home, the air is cooler, but smells like oil, smoke, and stored grain. Joseph tries to talk again. He sits Jesus down. He tells him, firmly, the way a father tells a son, that people are scared, that you can't just do things like this. Jesus looks at him, and for a moment, just a moment, there's something in his expression that reads like restraint, like he's holding back an ocean with a cup. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't cry. He simply stops for now. Days pass, because time passes even when your village is living next to a walking hazard. The kids start inching back toward him, because kids have terrible survival instincts and excellent curiosity. They circle him like he's a stray dog that might bite. Jesus goes outside again. This time he's near Joseph's work. Joseph is a carpenter, which in this world means you smell like sap and sweat, and your hands are always nicked. He's building something with beams laid out on the ground. The wood is rough, splintery, still alive with resin. Joseph measures, frowns, measures again. One beam is too short. You can see the problem immediately because you can see Joseph's shoulders sag. A beam too short means lost time, wasted effort, and a customer who will complain like it's their hobby. Joseph mutters under his breath, because carpenters have always muttered under their breath. Jesus watches. Then, without drama, he steps up to the short beam. He puts his hands on it, and he pulls. Not like a grown man pulling, like a child tugging at something stubborn. The beam lengthens. Wood fibers stretch the way they shouldn't. The grain slides into place like reality just decided to be helpful. Joseph's mouth drops open. He runs a hand over the end of it, feeling it like he expects it to snap back. It doesn't. For the first time in this entire nightmare, the miracle is practical. No dead kids, no blindness, no teacher collapsing like his pride had a heart attack. Just a piece of wood becoming the right size so Joseph can finish his work. You feel your body unclench a little because finally, we're using divine power for something other than terrorizing the PTA. Joseph exhales like a man who's been holding his breath for years. He looks at Jesus with something like relief. And then, because this story refuses to behave, you get pulled back into the awkwardness again. A new teacher appears later, because humans are persistent and foolish in a very consistent way. This teacher has heard what happened to the first one. He walks in like a man approaching a scorpion, slow and careful, trying to look friendly while keeping his organs protected. He speaks gently. He offers to teach. He makes a little speech about patience and wisdom, because speeches are how adults try to tame situations they don't understand. Jesus goes with him. This time, things go differently. Jesus answers questions. He recites letters. He speaks calmly. The teacher relaxes. His shoulders lower. His face unclenches. It's like watching someone step off a ledge they didn't know they were standing on. The other children come closer, peeking. A couple of them grin, relieved that school might not be fatal today. Jesus sits there like a small king, allowing a court to continue. You can feel it. The villagers hope that maybe he's growing out of the murder phase. And then you remember he's still a child who is, on his best day, still unpredictable. You're back outside again. Kids are playing on a rooftop because rooftops are flat and everybody uses them like extra rooms. The sun beats down and the roof smells like hot clay and old pigeon droppings. A child slips. There's a shout, a gasp. The boy tumbles off the edge and hits the ground below with a sound you will never forget. A dull, sickening thud. Adults rush out. Someone starts wailing before they even reach him. Jesus appears in the crowd, small shoulders pushing through legs and robes. People part without meaning to. Nobody wants to be the person who blocks him. You look down at the boy. His body is twisted wrong. Dust has settled on his face like a thin mask. The mother is sobbing, rocking forward and back, hands fluttering helplessly. A man is shouting the boy's name like volume can pull someone back. Jesus steps closer. He kneels. He touches the boy, and he speaks quietly. The boy inhales. Not a dramatic gasp. A simple breath, like waking from sleep. His eyes open. He sits up, blinking, confused, and everyone around him recoils like they've seen a ghost, because they have, sort of. The mother makes a sound that isn't language. It's raw relief, raw terror, raw gratitude, all at once. People press in, crying, laughing, whispering, and you can feel the village's emotions twisting into a knot. Because what do you do with this? What do you do with a child who can kill with a word and undo death with a touch? How do you scold that? How do you nurture it? You don't. You survive it. That's what the village is doing, surviving it day by day. You hear other little stories too, the kind that spread like smoke. A boy gets bitten by something, snake, scorpion, some sharp-toothed piece of the earth. and he's shrieking, clutching his hand while the skin swells. Jesus comes near, and the swelling goes down. Someone's carrying water and spills it, because everyone spills water in a world where containers are awkward and your hands are tired. Jesus does something, that makes the water show up anyway, like the universe just got corrected. At one point, he's sent to fetch water, because every child gets sent to fetch water. He takes a jar. The jar breaks. Any other kid would come home with panic in his throat, expecting consequences. Jesus gathers the water in his cloak like fabric is suddenly a bucket, and he walks back without spilling. Mary looks at him like she wants to be proud and also wants to lie down for a year, because that's the constant pressure in this house. Mary is raising a child. Also, Mary is raising something else. The home is small. The air is always full of cooking smoke. There are always flies. There's no quiet corner where Mary can sit alone with her thoughts. Privacy is a myth. Personal space is a fantasy. And her son is out here rewriting the laws of nature between breakfast and lunch. You try to picture the routine. You wake up on a mat that smells like straw, sweat, and old oil. You eat bread that's dense enough to qualify as building material. You drink water that tastes like the inside of a clay jar. You sweep the floor. You shoe a chicken. You try to keep the toddler from eating dirt. And somewhere in the middle of that, the child you're raising makes birds out of mud and sends them into the sky. It's not cute. It's not a sweet holiday card. It's unsettling, because the child in these stories doesn't feel safe. He feels like a storm in a small body. Even when he does something kind, it lands with that same shiver of fear, because you can't forget what else he did. You can't forget the boy in the dust. You can't forget the man clawing at his useless eyes. You can't forget the teacher collapsing while the children ran screaming. The village lives in that tension now, day after day. They greet Joseph politely. They nod at Mary with careful respect. They keep their kids a little closer. And the kids, because kids are brave and foolish, still drift toward Jesus anyway. Some of them are drawn to him like he's a fire. Others keep a wide circle, whispering his name like it's a dare. You feel it in your own chest as you keep turning the pages. This is not the Jesus you're used to. Not the gentle healer with calm hands and patient eyes. This Jesus is power without the adult frame to hold it. Divinity in a body that still gets hungry, still gets irritated, still gets that flare of anger over something petty. A bump, a complaint, a teacher's pride. It's the most uncomfortable kind of holy. Not because it's dark for drama's sake, because it's messy, because it feels like what might actually happen if infinite power moved into a human life from the beginning. Not a polished saint statue, a real child, with real impulses and consequences that could flatten a village. The book keeps giving you these scenes like they're normal. Like everyone should accept that this is how it went. You find yourself frowning at the page, and your fingers pause on the papyrus. The ink is faded in places. Some letters are thicker where the pen pressed harder, like the scribe's hand got tense during the worst parts. You can almost see him, bent over a table, oil lamp smoking, copying this with a face that keeps making tiny expressions of disbelief. Because even writing it down feels like participating in it. You keep going anyway because stopping would be sane, and you didn't come here to be sane. By the end, the stories start smoothing out a little. Jesus grows older. The sharp edges dull. He starts looking less like a supernatural hazard and more like the boy who will become the man you recognize. But the aftertaste stays. You close the cover slowly. The leather makes that soft thump again, like a door shutting in a house where something strange still lives. Your hands smell like old dust and animal skin now. Your brain feels like it's been walking around with a pebble in its sandal because you can't unknow what you just read. A childhood full of power and consequences, miracles and petty violence, fear and awe tangled together like nettles. You set the book down next to the Gospel of Thomas. Two Thomases, two very different kinds of unsettling. One gives you riddles that dissolve your ego. The other gives you a small boy who can make your neighbor go blind. You sit there in the hush after, listening to the quiet creaks of the room around you. The world outside keeps moving like nothing happened, and you realize you're not done with uncomfortable origin stories. Because if you think that was strange, wait until you hear what they said about his mother. But not all banned books were about adding to the story. Some were banned because they told a completely different story. You're still in that hush, with the two Thomas books sitting there like unexploded pots. Your fingers smell like dust, leather, and old anxiety. The lamp smoke clings to your hair, and the room feels too small for what you've been reading. So you reach for the next one. Not another Jesus did what in the alley situation. This one feels quieter. The cover isn't dramatic, no warning growl, just that same tired leather, cracked like dried riverbed mud. You open it, and the papyrus does that dry rasp again. The ink is darker here, steadier, like the scribe wasn't laughing or flinching every other line. And the first surprise is immediate. This isn't starting with a manger. It isn't starting with angels singing and shepherds smelling like they always smell. It starts with a couple you've barely heard of. Two names that feel like they're standing in the corner of the room, clearing their throats. Joachim, Anna. You blink at the page. Because of course Mary needs an origin story too. Of course she does. If the child is going to be cosmic, the mother can't just show up like a normal person with normal problems. So the book drops you into Jerusalem, and it's not the clean, polished Jerusalem you see in paintings. It's crowded and loud and gritty, packed with people and animals and little clouds of flies that never clock out. You're walking through stone streets that hold heat like a grudge. Your sandals scrape dust and crush straw. Every breath tastes like smoke, sweat, and the faint sour edge of too many bodies living too close together. It's feast time, which means everyone is pretending to be spiritually refreshed while elbowing strangers for space. A vendor is yelling about figs. A goat is yelling about being alive. Somewhere nearby, a child is crying with the endurance of a professional. And Joachim, Mary's father in this story, is trying to do the right thing. He's wealthy enough to bring offerings. He's got animals. He's got gifts. He also has one problem that apparently makes society short-circuit: no children. You can feel the social pressure before anyone even opens their mouth. In this world, people don't keep their opinions inside their skulls. They just let them out, raw and steaming, directly into your face. Joachim steps toward the temple with his offerings, and the air changes. The temple area smells like incense trying its best to cover up a more honest perfume. Warm blood, singed fat, wet wool, and the metallic tang that sticks to the back of your throat. Priests move around in practiced motions, like the world is a schedule and they're keeping it. A line forms. People shuffle. Joachim is ready to give. He's ready to be respectable. A priest looks at him and, without even trying to be gentle, says no. Not maybe later. Not let's talk. Just a public, humiliating no. Like Joachim brought a coupon that expired. You lean in as the words land. You don't have children, the priest says, loud enough for the people around to hear. So you don't get to offer first. First. That's the part that stings, because it's petty. It's not just you are sad, it's you are ranked. Joachim's face tightens. His hands flex around the offering like he might crush it out of spite. People stare. A man nearby makes a sympathetic noise that somehow still feels nosy. A woman whispers to another woman, and they both glance at Joachim, like his childlessness might be contagious. Joachim doesn't argue, not because he agrees, because what do you even say to a priest in front of the temple? He turns away, and you follow him, because now you're in that awful place where shame has momentum. He walks fast, shoulders hunched like he's trying to shrink out of existence. He pushes through the crowd, and nobody moves to help. Outside the city, the air gets thinner, but it still smells like sun-baked stone and livestock. Joachim goes out into the wilderness like a man storming off from his own life. He doesn't go to a friend. He doesn't go home. He goes to the hills to shepherd territory, where the ground is rough and the wind is sharp, and everything looks like it could scrape your knees. He camps out like he's punishing himself, sleeping on dirt that never fully softens. Days pass with that gritty sameness. You wake up cold. You eat food that tastes like survival. Your clothes pick up the smell of sheep whether you want them to or not. Joachim prays out there, alone. Not in a cozy way, in a raw way. Meanwhile, back in the city, Anna is at home, and you can feel the contrast immediately. Joachim chose wilderness misery. Anna gets domestic misery. Her house smells like stored grain, oil, and the sour edge of clay jars that never quite dry. There's a courtyard with a small tree. There are shadows on the wall from laundry that hangs like tired flags. Anna sits there with her thoughts, and the thoughts are cruel. Because in this world, infertility doesn't just hurt. It gets narrated. People tell you what it means. They tell you what you did wrong. They tell you what God must be thinking. And to make it worse, Anna has a maidservant who decides today is the day to say the quiet part out loud. The servant looks at her, at the woman of the house, and basically implies Anna is cursed. Not gently, not with a hug afterward, just a blunt little jab, like tossing a rock into a bruise. Anna's face changes. You know that feeling when you've been holding it together with string and someone bumps the table? That. She tears her clothes in grief, because dramatic mourning is a fully supported feature of this culture. She sits under the tree and cries until her throat feels scraped. The story starts to feel heavy with that old fairy tale intensity. Not glittery fairy tale, old fairy tale. The kind where someone gets exiled for sneezing wrong. Anna looks up through tears, and there's a nest in the tree. Tiny birds, mouths open, begging. She watches them and feels the ache sharpen. Even the birds have babies. It's almost comical how hard the universe is twisting the knife. Like creation itself is doing an infomercial for motherhood, right in her face. Anna prays too. Not pretty words, desperate ones. And that's when the story does what these stories love to do. It introduces a messenger. You don't get trumpets. You don't get a soft glow and a choir. You get an angel arriving like a sudden pressure change in the air. Anna's body stills, hairs rising on her arms, because something just stepped into her space that doesn't belong to ordinary life. The angel tells her she will conceive. Just like that. Simple sentence. Life-altering promise. And Anna reacts the way a person reacts when hope shows up after you've trained yourself not to expect it. She believes. She also panics a little. She makes a vow immediately, because vows are what you do when you're bargaining with heaven. If she has a child, she'll dedicate the child to the Lord. Not, will raise her well. Not, will be grateful. She's offering the kid back, because apparently the only way to handle a miracle is to immediately sign paperwork. At the same time, because this story loves symmetry, Joachim out in the hills gets his own angel visit. He's standing among sheep, smelling like lanolin and smoke, trying to pray through his own embarrassment. The angel tells him to go home. Anna will conceive. Joachim's face changes from hollow to stunned, and you can almost feel the way his chest expands with breath he didn't know he still had. So he heads back, and the story gives you this oddly sweet scene. Joachim and Anna meet at the city gate, not in their house, not in private, right there where everyone can see. Because this is a story that likes public moments. They run to each other like teenagers, and they kiss. It's tender and it's relieved, and it's also in front of whatever random guy is hauling produce through the gate. Privacy is still a myth. Anna conceives, and the months pass in that slow, ordinary way, where bodies change and people whisper. You can almost smell the domestic routine again. Bread baking, water being carried, sweat drying on skin. When the baby is born, it's a girl, Mary. And the book treats this like a cosmic event, like the air itself should clap. Anna holds her, exhausted and radiant in the way only a person can be when they're running on pain and joy at the same time. The room smells like childbirth, blood and iron and damp cloth, mixed with oil lamps and whatever herbs someone thought might help. Mary is tiny, red-faced, wrinkled, just a baby. But nobody acts like she's just anything. This child is immediately special, immediately set apart. And Anna remembers the vow. Of course she does. So Mary's childhood becomes unusual, not we live in a modest home, not she helps with chores and plays with other kids. No, Mary's basically being raised like a sacred object. When she's 6 months old, Anna sets her down. Mary stands up. That's what the book says. 6 months, standing. You picture this little baby wobbling on chubby legs, and you look around like, is anyone else hearing this? But everyone in the story just nods like, yes, obviously. The holy baby has good balance. When Mary is a year old, they throw a feast. Because in this world, you throw a feast for any excuse you can afford. You're in the house again, and it's crowded with relatives and neighbors, everyone sweating gently into their nice garments. There's food, real food, stew with oil, bread that isn't completely weaponized, maybe even fruit. People talk loud. Someone laughs too hard. A child drops something sticky on the floor. Anna sets Mary down, and Mary walks. Not toddles, walks. Everyone praises God, because what else do you do when a toddler is hitting milestones like she's speed-running humanity? But the vow is still there, sitting in the corner like an unpaid debt. 3 years old, that's when it happens. 3 years old, and they take Mary to the temple. You feel your own gut tighten, because you know what 3 is. 3 is still baby talk. 3 is still, I will cry if my snack breaks. But they dress her up. They clean her little face. They put her in proper clothing, and they lead her through Jerusalem like a procession. The streets are busy. The smells are aggressive. The stones are hot. Mary's small hand is in Anna's, and Mary's feet move fast to keep up. You watch Joachim and Anna's faces, and they're doing that parent thing where you're proud and devastated at the same time. They reach the temple steps. 15 steps, the story says. 15. And Mary, 3-year-old Mary, goes up them without looking back. She climbs like she knows where she's going. You stand there at the bottom with the parents, feeling that particular kind of heartbreak that comes when you let go of something you love because you promised. At the top, the priests receive her, and Mary turns and blesses her parents. Again, she is 3. You try to hold the image in your mind, a toddler with the composure of an elderly nun. The temple swallows her up. Inside, the air is different. Cooler stone, thicker incense. Always that undercurrent of blood and ash, because sacrifices do not smell like candles. Mary is raised there among virgins, the book says, fed like a dove. Angels bring her food, which, practically speaking, sounds great. Less grocery shopping. But you're also looking around at the temple like, this is not a daycare. This is a complex machine of holiness, rules, and men who take their job very seriously. It's a place where you wash and still never feel clean. It's a place where a wrong move can mean you're unclean, and unclean can mean you're out. Mary grows up inside that. You can almost feel the rhythm of her days. Stone underfoot. Barely any softness anywhere. The sound of chanting that never fully leaves your ears. The smell of incense baked into your hair. There are other girls, other women. There are tasks. You grind grain until your arms ache. You carry water in jars that dig into your palms. You sweep, because everything is dust and ash all the time. And over it all is the constant awareness. You are being watched. Not in a creepy way, in a religious way, which somehow feels stricter. Mary becomes a teenager, and the story hits the next problem. Menstruation. Yes, we're going there. Because the temple is holy, and blood, human blood, is a whole situation. So when Mary reaches the age where her body will start doing what bodies do, the priests panic. Not screaming panic, administrative panic. The sort of panic where older men gather in a semicircle and start discussing a young girl like she's a ceremonial object with a warranty about to expire. Mary can't stay, they decide. Not because she did anything wrong, because biology showed up like an uninvited guest. So they need a solution that keeps her protected. A guardian. Not a husband, the story insists. A guardian. And the way they choose this guardian is deeply weird. They call in the widowers. Men of Israel show up, older men, holding staffs. Wooden rods, worn smooth by hands and time, like walking sticks that have seen a lot of disappointment. You're standing in the temple space with them, and it smells like old wool, sun-warmed sweat, and incense doing its best to keep the vibe spiritual. The priest announces what's happening. They're going to cast lots, because nothing says responsible caregiving plan, like a sacred raffle. Each man brings his rod, forward. The priest collects them like a bundle of sticks. You look at the pile and feel that creeping modern thought. This is a lottery to see who gets assigned a teenage girl. Your skin crawls. It should. They pray, and the priest takes the rods into the holy place. The men wait outside, shifting on their feet, clearing throats, trying not to look too eager, because you do not want to be the guy who looks eager. Time stretches. The temple doors feel heavy. The air feels suspended, like everyone is holding their breath to see who the universe points at. The priest comes back out with the rods. He hands them back one by one. Nothing happens at first. No sign. No flutter. No dramatic moment. The men start to relax, like maybe the whole thing was symbolic and they'll just choose someone sensible. Then Joseph gets his rod. Joseph in this story is older, not the young, sturdy, romantic Joseph people like to imagine. This Joseph has been around. This Joseph has the vibe of a man who would like a quiet evening and absolutely does not want new responsibilities. He takes the rod and a dove flies out of the rod, just pop, bird. It flutters up and lands on Joseph's head, like it pays rent there. The men stare. Joseph stares. You stare. Because the universe has just chosen, and it chose the guy who looks like he might throw out his back reaching for a top shelf. Joseph immediately protests. He says he has sons. He says he's old. He says in so many words, "Please do not do this to me." The priests are not moved. They warn him about defying the sign, and you can feel the threat behind the holy language. Nobody wants to be the man who argues with a dove in front of the temple. So Joseph takes Mary, and the story is careful here. He takes her into his keeping, not as a wife, as a guarded virgin. So Mary leaves the temple, and you can almost feel the change in her world. Less incense, more sawdust. Joseph's house smells like wood shavings, resin, smoke, and the faint sourness of tools that have been handled by sweaty hands for years. There's a work area. There are unfinished beams. Joseph's life is practical. Measurements, repairs, orders from people who always want it cheaper. Mary is dropped into this like a white cloth set on a grimy bench. And for a moment, things are calm. Then the temple calls again. They need virgins to spin thread and weave a new veil, a curtain for the holy place. This is prestigious work, apparently. Also extremely stressful, because you do not want to be the person who messes up the holy curtain. Mary is chosen to spin the purple and scarlet. You see her sitting with dyed wool, fingers stained with color. The purple is deep, expensive, the kind of dye that smells sharp and a little rotten, because it comes from crushed creatures and chemical stubbornness. Her hands move in practiced motions, twisting, pulling, winding. Thread forms thin and consistent. It's almost peaceful, in a strange way, until Joseph leaves town for work. Because of course he does. He's a builder. He has contracts. He's gone for months. Mary stays in the house, doing her spinning. And this is where the story turns into the part that makes everyone in the room lean closer. Mary goes out to draw water. You're with her because you can't help it. The path is dusty. The sun is hard. The well area smells like damp stone, algae, and the sour breath of clay jars that have held too many days of water. Women gather there because water is always a social situation. They talk, they watch each other. Mary steps up with her jar, and she hears a voice, not from a person nearby, not from a gossiping neighbor, a voice that slides into the air like it belongs there. Mary startles so hard she drops the jar. Clay shatters on stone. Water splashes over her feet, darkening the dust. Women gasp because breaking a jar is expensive. Mary turns, wide-eyed. She goes back home, shaken, heart pounding, trying to pretend this didn't just happen. But the voice comes again, clearer now. An angel appears, and the message is familiar, but it hits differently when you're inside Mary's skin. You feel the fear in your stomach. You feel the confusion. You also feel the strange gravity of it, like the room has become a sacred space without anyone's permission. Mary is told she will conceive, not through a man, through God. Mary's mouth opens and closes. Her mind scrambles for categories that fit. She's a virgin dedicated to purity. She's living under the protection of an older guardian. Her whole life has been shaped around being untouched. And now this. Mary agrees, not with bubbly excitement, with that quiet, trembling willingness that feels like stepping onto a bridge you can't inspect first. Afterward, the house feels too quiet. Mary goes back to spinning. Her fingers keep moving because what else do you do with your hands when your world has just shifted? Days pass. Her body changes, not dramatically at first. A heaviness, a faint nausea, the kind of subtle wrongness that makes you pause in the middle of a task, hand on your stomach, staring at nothing. Eventually, it's visible. Mary is pregnant, and you can feel the dread that pulls in her chest, because in her world, pregnancy is not a private matter. It's not something you process. It's something that becomes public property. People notice. The women at the well notice first, because women at the well notice everything. Eyes flick to Mary's belly. Voices change. Whispers start. They don't whisper miracle. They whisper the other thing. And the cruel irony is unbearable. Mary, the temple-raised virgin, the girl chosen to spin holy thread, is now the subject of the oldest accusation in the world. So when Joseph comes back, smelling like travel, sun, sweat, road dust, and cheap lodging, he walks into a situation that makes his life tilt sideways. He sees Mary. He sees her belly. His face goes slack. You watch the thoughts hit him in waves, because what else would he think? Nobody told him angels were involved. He reacts like a man who just discovered someone set his workshop on fire. He tears at his beard. He groans. He says the kind of things people say when they're hurt and scared and trying to find someone to blame. He asks, who did this? He asks what happened. Mary insists she's still pure. That sentence is not soothing in this context. It's gasoline on confusion. Joseph looks like he might faint and punch a wall at the same time. Now the priests hear about it, because of course they do. Nothing stays in a village. Nothing stays in a city. Mary and Joseph get hauled to the temple like they're being called into the world's most terrifying HR meeting. You're walking with them through streets that suddenly feel more hostile. People stare. Someone mutters. The temple steps loom, and the air around the entrance feels colder, even in heat. Inside, the priests look at Mary like she's a cracked vessel. They look at Joseph like he's incompetent. The accusation is blunt. Mary has defiled the temple's purity. Joseph has failed as her guardian. It's public. It's humiliating. Mary's face is pale, but her eyes are steady. Joseph's hands tremble, and you can tell he wants to disappear into a hole in the stone floor. Now, we come to the part that is rarely discussed, the test, the bitter water. You can feel the dread shift into something more physical as they prepare it. A priest brings out a vessel, clay or metal, dull and heavy. Water is poured in. Then comes the dust. Not clean dust. Not, oh no, I dropped it. Temple floor dust. The kind of dust that's been walked on by countless feet, mixed with ash, ground grit, old soot, and whatever microscopic remnants come from a place where animals are sacrificed daily. The priest scrapes it up and drops it into the water. It clouds instantly, turning the whole thing into a beige-grey sludge. You can smell it when it's stirred. Wet earth, stale stone, and something bitter that makes your mouth want to retreat. This is the ancient equivalent of a lie detector test, except it's also a beverage, a cursed beverage. The priest speaks over it, words heavy with threat and holiness. People crowd in closer because nothing draws a crowd like potential disgrace. Mary stands there, young, pregnant, surrounded by men in authority and a room full of watching faces. Joseph stands beside her, sweating through his robe. The priest gives the cup to Mary first. You watch her hands lift it. The rim touches her mouth. She drinks. Her throat works as she swallows that gritty, bitter mixture. It clings to her lips. A little dribbles down her chin, and she wipes it away with the back of her hand like she's trying to stay human. The crowd holds its breath, because the test is supposed to do something if she's guilty. It's supposed to make her body betray her. That's the fear in the room. This moment where everyone expects a spectacle. Mary stands. Nothing happens. No swelling. No collapse. No dramatic punishment. Just Mary, alive, steady, eyes forward. Now the priest gives the cup to Joseph. Joseph looks at it like it's a dead mouse in a bowl. He drinks anyway, because refusal would be an admission. The bitter water hits his mouth and you see him flinch. He swallows, grimacing, coughing once. He wipes his lips. The crowd watches his body too, waiting for some sign that guilt has a physical shape. Nothing happens. The priests aren't satisfied yet, because humans rarely are. They send them out, into the wilderness, because the ritual includes a kind of go and let the curse work if it's going to. So you're walking with Mary and Joseph out beyond the city again, into scrubby hills where the wind smells like dry grass and sun-baked stone. Mary's sandals scuff dust. Joseph's shoulders sag like he's carrying more than wood these days. They stand out there while the people who escorted them watch for signs. Time passes in that cruel way, where nothing happens but your heart keeps racing anyway. Mary doesn't collapse. Joseph doesn't swell up or drop dead, or do anything convenient for the crowd's appetite. They return, cleared, and you feel the emotional whiplash of it. Mary's vindicated, but the humiliation happened anyway. The whispers won't evaporate just because a ritual cup didn't produce fireworks. Joseph is relieved, but also wrung out. He looks like a man who aged 10 years in one afternoon, and yet the story insists they are innocent. So Mary goes back to the house, back to the smells of wood and smoke, back to the ordinary tasks that don't care about cosmic pregnancies. She sits, she eats, she sleeps, the baby grows, and you can feel how different this is from the other uncomfortable origin story you just left behind. That one was loud, chaotic, a child swinging power around like a stick. This one is quiet, but it's not soft. It's a story obsessed with purity and testing and being watched. A story where a girl's body becomes a courtroom. You turn the page, and the papyrus edge catches your fingertip. It's dry enough to sting. Like the book itself is irritated, you're still touching it. The lamp pops once, a tiny snap of burning oil. The room smells like smoke and old hide glue. And you realize what makes this book feel like a fairy tale. Not the doves or the angels, not even the miraculous pregnancies. It's the way everyone is trapped in roles. The barren woman becomes a mother, but only through a miracle. The child becomes holy, but only by being handed away. The old man becomes guardian, whether he wants it or not. And Mary is treated like a sacred object that can be contaminated by other people's assumptions. You sit there with your hands on the open book, feeling that paradox settle in your chest, because this wasn't official, not in the way the locked room men wanted. And still, the images from it are everywhere once you know to look. A girl climbing temple steps, an old Joseph holding a staff, a dove hovering like a signature, the kind of story people keep telling even when they're told not to. You glance back at the other books, stacked like quiet trouble. Baby Jesus, the Menace. Jesus, the riddle speaker. Angels, the lovers. Giants, the mistakes. Now Mary, small, brave, watched, drinking dusty, bitter water in front of men who think holiness is something you can prove with a cup. You let the page rest under your fingers a moment longer. The ink sits there, dark against the papyrus, steady, certain. Outside the room, the world keeps moving, unconcerned. Inside, this banned little origin story keeps breathing, stubborn as a candle that refuses to go out in a drafty stone library. And it waits, like it always has, for the next pair of hands willing to open it. And then there were the books that weren't banned for being too strange, but for being too real. You don't even notice your shoulders are tight until you try to lower them. The library air is stale with lamp smoke and old glue, and your eyes sting like you've been crying. Maybe you have. Maybe it's just the smoke. Either way, your fingers still feel gritty, like temple floor dust never truly comes off. You slide the Mary book back onto the stack, and the leather makes that dry little squeak, the kind of squeak that sounds like a complaint. Fair. The next book is thinner than you expect. Not flashy. No dramatic cover art. Just a name pressed into the skin like a bruise that never healed. Judas. Your stomach does that small, inconvenient flip, because you already have a Judas in your head, don't you? Everybody does. You open it anyway. The papyrus is stiff, and the ink looks hurried in places, like the scribe kept glancing over his shoulder. You run a finger along a line and come away with dust and a little smear of black, like the book is marking you. The room changes, not with angels or trumpets, with that sudden sensation of being watched from inside the words. And before you can get comfortable, you're not in the library anymore. You're in a house in the city, and it's too full. Too many men, too much breath, too much warmth trapped against stone walls that were never meant to host a crowd. The air smells like olive oil, stale body heat, fish that's been sitting out too long, and wine poured into clay cups that still taste like yesterday's water. There's a low table, there are bowls, there's bread that's tough and honest about it. And there's Jesus. Except, no, not the version that poses in soft light while everyone looks admiring and clean. This Jesus looks amused, not gentle amused, more like someone watching adults argue about instructions that are clearly printed on the jar. The disciples are gathered around, shoulders pressed, close, knees bumping, trying to sit with dignity in a room where dignity is basically not available. A man clears his throat. Someone's stomach growls loud enough to be heard, which is humiliating in any century. And the first thing that hits you is the mood. They're doing that solemn religious energy, whispered prayers, serious faces, hands lifted like they're trying to catch holiness out of the air. It's a group project, and everyone is trying too hard. They're offering thanks over the meal, and they sound confident, like they know exactly who they're speaking to. They're calling on God with the kind of certainty that makes your skin prickle, because certainty is always louder than it deserves. Jesus listens. Jesus watches. Jesus starts laughing. Not a polite chuckle. A real laugh, sharp and sudden, like someone just told him the funniest thing imaginable at the worst possible time. The room freezes. One disciple's mouth hangs open. Another looks offended, like he just got laughed at during a serious meeting. You feel the discomfort ripple through the men like a draft under a door, because nobody likes being laughed at, especially not when they're trying to be holy in public. Peter's eyes narrow. You can practically hear his thoughts. Is he mocking us in our own dinner? Jesus keeps smiling, and it's not cruel exactly. It's just, he knows something they don't, and he says it. He tells them they're not doing what they think they're doing. You watch their faces tighten, because that's not what you want from your teacher during sacred dinner. You want reassurance. You want a blessing. You want everyone to leave feeling spiritually hydrated. Instead, Jesus is looking at their prayers like they're holding up a clay cup with a crack in it and insisting it's fine. They bristle. They insist they're doing what's right. They insist they're offering thanks to the proper God. You expect Jesus to correct them gently. He laughs again. That's when you realize this book is not here to comfort anyone. This book is here to pick up everything you think you know and shake it until loose coins fall out. Jesus tells them, calmly, like he's commenting on the weather, that the one they're praying to isn't the highest God. Their devotion is pointed at something lower. The room goes hot. You can feel the insult in the air like smoke. Because in their world, you can survive hunger and Rome and taxes, but you cannot survive being told your worship is aimed at the wrong throne. They start arguing all at once. Voices overlap, hands gesture. Someone knocks an elbow into a bowl, and oil sloshes onto the table, catching lamplight like a thin, golden bruise. Jesus lets it happen. He doesn't jump in to manage the conflict like a tired parent. He watches them, and there's that expression again, amused, almost tender, like he's seeing little kids playing at adulthood. Then his gaze shifts. It lands on one man who isn't shouting. Judas. Judas sits a little apart, not dramatically apart, not lone wolf in the corner, just not in the center of the noise. His face is tight, and his eyes don't flick away from Jesus. He looks like someone holding a secret in his mouth, afraid it will show on his tongue. Jesus calls him out, not harshly, almost like an invitation. He tells Judas to step away from the others, and Judas does. The room reacts immediately. A couple disciples lean forward, suspicious. Peter looks like he wants to object on principle, but Judas stands, and the stool scrapes the floor with that awful wooden shriek. Every head tracks him as he moves. You follow, because your body has decided this is the part you need to see up close. Away from the table, the air is slightly cooler. The wall is damp with old plaster, and it smells faintly like mildew and smoke. You can hear the others still muttering behind you, the hum of offended men. Judas faces Jesus, and Judas speaks first, which is already wrong. He says he knows who Jesus is. Not the usual titles, not the crowd pleasers. He says Jesus comes from a realm the others can't even name properly. He says it with that careful intensity, like he's walking across thin ice and trying not to make a sound. Jesus' eyes sharpen, not in anger, in recognition. And that recognition hits you like a physical blow. Jesus tells Judas the truth, quietly, like he's handing him something heavy. He tells Judas he will surpass all the others. You expect Judas to look proud. He looks sick, because surpass in this moment doesn't feel like a trophy. It feels like being chosen for the job nobody wants. Jesus speaks about mysteries, about things above and beyond this world, and you feel that vertigo again, like the floor beneath the room isn't solid stone anymore. The disciples behind you keep arguing about the prayers, still offended, still certain. They have no idea what's happening over here. Jesus tells Judas he will be hated. He says Judas will be cursed by generations. Judas swallows. You can see his throat work. You can see sweat at his hairline, catching the lamplight. He asks what he should do. Jesus tells him he will sacrifice the man who clothes him. It lands weird. Not betray your friend. Not turn me in. Something stranger. Like Jesus is wearing a body the way you wear a rough cloak in winter, and Judas is going to be the one to pull it off him. Judas stares like he wants to argue and can't find the right words. Because what do you say to that? Excuse me, teacher. Please clarify the metaphysical wardrobe situation. Jesus keeps talking, and the words carry that sharp edge of a secret that isn't meant for the group. He speaks of rulers, powers, forces that manage this world like cruel administrators, stamping forms and denying appeals. You get the sense of an entire cosmic bureaucracy, not the comforting kind, the kind with no windows and bad lighting. Jesus tells Judas that the others, the ones still praying loudly at the table, are serving those lower powers without realizing it. Their sacrifices, their rituals, their confidence, it all feeds the wrong system. Behind you, someone laughs bitterly, as if to say, "Yeah, tell him." You glance, and one of the disciples is still furious, jaw clenched, eyes bright with humiliation. Jesus says Judas is different, not better in a cozy way, different in a terrifying way. Judas says he saw a vision. He describes it like he's forcing himself to speak. He saw the disciples in a house, offering sacrifices, doing holy things, and it was all wrong. He saw them doing acts they called worship, but it looked like blindness. Jesus listens like a doctor listening to symptoms. He tells Judas what it means. He tells him the disciples will lead people astray. They'll build altars. They'll spill offerings. They'll make a whole machine out of devotion, and the machine won't serve what they think it serves. You feel your stomach tighten again, because now the air of the room has changed. Not just because of religious tension, because this is a book that looks directly at the future and says, "That thing you're building, I don't like it." No wonder people wanted it gone. At the table, the disciples finally settle down enough to turn and notice that Judas is standing with Jesus, separate. Their faces shift instantly. Suspicion, jealousy, a tiny flare of fear. It's like watching a friend pull your boss aside at a party. Jesus walks back toward the others, and Judas follows, moving like his feet are heavier now. The disciples ask what he's been talking about with Judas. You can hear it in their voices. Why him? Why not us? Jesus says things that make them recoil. He tells them they cannot understand. Not yet. They bristle again, offended, because being told you're not ready is the ancient version of being left on read. Judas's face is blank, but you can feel the storm under it. The meal continues, but the warmth is gone. Now it's just a room full of men chewing bread like they're chewing on resentment. The bread is dry. The wine is sharp. Someone's cup has a chip on the rim, and it scrapes uncomfortably against your lip when you instinctively swallow. Jesus keeps speaking in that calm way, dropping lines that sound like they came from a place with different air. He speaks of a great generation, a holy realm, a luminous cloud. You try to picture it and your mind stutters because you're used to heaven as gold streets and harps and organized choirs. This isn't that. This is something stranger, more abstract, more vast, like someone describing a color you've never seen. Jesus tells Judas to look up, and it happens. The ceiling of the room doesn't break. There's no dramatic collapse. Instead, your awareness stretches, like the room becomes thin. Above, there's a movement, like light gathering, like a veil pulled back without hands. Judas sees it too. A bright cloud, not fluffy and friendly. Bright like staring into the sun through water. Bright like your eyes want to shut, but you can't. Judas steps forward, and for a second, you think he's about to run. He doesn't. He stands there and looks, and you see his face change into something like grief. Jesus speaks about stars, not the cozy stars you point at on a clear night. Stars that are assigned, stars that rule, stars that mark destinies like tally marks. He tells Judas that Judas has a star, and it's not a comforting statement. The disciples watch all of this with confusion twisting into anger, because they can feel the separation. They can feel they're not the ones being addressed. One of them mutters something about demons. Another shifts his seat like he wants to stand up and stop whatever this is. Jesus doesn't stop. He tells Judas what will happen. Judas will hand him over. Judas will do it on purpose. Not as a mistake, not as a tragic misunderstanding, as obedience. You hear it and your brain wants to reject it because it scrapes against every familiar telling. But the room won't let you dodge it. Judas looks like he's going to be sick again. He says he's ready. The words come out like a vow made with clenched teeth. Jesus's. Expression softens, just slightly. It's the look of someone who knows you're about to walk into something awful and has no other path to offer. The disciples don't hear the details. They're still stuck on the insult, still stuck on the earlier laughter, still trying to reassert the world where they are the inner circle. They start boasting. It's almost painful. One says he's strong enough to stand with Jesus always. Another swears loyalty with the kind of confidence you only have before life tests you. Jesus watches them like they're lighting paper boats on fire and calling it a fleet. Judas sits down again, and the meal limps toward its end. The room smells worse now. More bodies, more time. The oil lamps burning low, the air thick with smoke and breath. Someone burps quietly, trying to disguise it as a cough. It doesn't work. Jesus stands. The men shift, startled by the movement, as if their teacher has just stood up in the middle of a tense argument, and they don't know if he's leaving or escalating. Jesus speaks one last time to Judas with his eyes, not with words. Judas nods. That nod feels like a stone dropping into deep water. After that, you're outside. Night air hits your face, and it's cooler, but it carries the stink of the city, garbage pits, animals, damp stone, and the sour tang of too many people living too close. Torches flicker in the streets. Footsteps slap stone. Judas walks alone. Not dramatically alone. The city is never empty. There are always late workers, drunk men, dogs nosing through scraps, babies crying behind shutters. But Judas is alone in the way you can be alone in a crowd, sealed inside your own thoughts. He moves fast. His sandals scrape grit. His robe brushes against walls, picking up grime. Every time he passes a torch, the light catches his face, and you see that tight expression again. Not villainy, decision. He reaches a place where men are gathered, not disciples, other men, officials, guards, people with that posture of authority that comes from knowing someone else will swing the stick for you. They look up when Judas approaches, like they've been waiting. One of them says his name with surprise. Another's eyes narrow with suspicion, because why would Judas come to them unless something is wrong? Judas says he knows where Jesus will be. His voice doesn't shake, but it sounds like it's coming from deep inside him, like he's speaking past his own heart. They ask what he wants for this. Payment, reward, a cut. Judas looks almost insulted. He doesn't come off as greedy here. He comes off like a man trying to finish a task without getting stained by the details. He gives them what they need, a place, a time, a way. They agree quickly, because opportunists always agree quickly when they think they're winning. One of them reaches out, grips Judas's arm, and you feel the chill of that touch. Not supernatural, just human. A grip that says, "You're ours now." Judas pulls his arm back. He leaves. The city keeps breathing around him. Dogs bark. A man laughs from a doorway. Somewhere someone is singing badly, the way people sing when they've had enough wine to stop caring. Judas walks through all of it like he can't hear any of it, because in his head, the night is louder than the city. The scene shifts again, like turning a page too fast. You're not watching from a distance now. You're in a garden space, and the ground is uneven, and the air smells like crushed leaves and damp soil. Torches approach, bobbing like angry fireflies. Voices, metal, clinks. Jesus is there with the disciples, and they look exhausted, like men whose bodies are begging for sleep but their minds won't allow it. They startle at the sound. They stand, clumsy and half awake. One reaches for something, maybe a knife, maybe a stick, maybe just courage. Judas steps forward with the group that came with him. And this is where your own body expects the familiar cues. The kiss, the betrayal, the shock. But the feeling is different in this book, because Judas doesn't look triumphant. He looks like he's doing a terrible job he cannot refuse. He approaches Jesus, And Jesus doesn't flinch away like someone surprised. Jesus looks at him like this is the agreed meeting time. Judas gives the signal, whatever it is, and the guards move in. Hands grab, fabric pulls, sandals skid on soil. The disciples shout, confused, angry, terrified. Someone swings and a guard curses as he dodges. For a moment, it's pure chaos. Torches flaring, shadows leaping across, faces, breath coming fast and sharp. Jesus doesn't fight. Jesus lets them take him. And Judas steps back, letting the moment happen, like a man stepping away from an animal trap after it snaps. The guards bind Jesus. Rope digs into wrists. Jesus' robe is tugged, twisted, stained with dirt at the hem. The disciples are shouting Judas' name now, not as a question, as an accusation. Judas doesn't answer. He stands there while the guards start dragging Jesus away, and you can see it in his posture. He's not celebrating, he's enduring. A torch passes close enough that you smell the pitch and smoke, thick and oily. The light catches Judas's face, and you see something that makes your throat tighten. Not regret exactly, more like someone watching the last door close, knowing they were the one who pushed it. The scene jolts, like the book is flipping forward without your consent. You're back with Jesus and Judas in that strange space of conversation, where the world looks thin and the air feels too bright. Jesus speaks again about the stars, the rulers, the lower powers. Judas listens. The words tumble out, heavy and cosmic, and you can barely keep your footing inside them. Jesus tells him he will be cursed by those who don't understand. He tells him others will take Judas's place, and their names will be praised while Judas's name is spat. Judas's mouth tightens. He says almost desperately whether he will be saved. Jesus doesn't give him a cozy answer. He gives him the kind of answer that feels like standing on a cliff edge. There is a realm beyond this world, and Judas will not step into it the way he hopes. Not because Judas is the worst, because this world is a trap, and nobody gets out clean. It's brutal. It's not the kind of message you stitch onto a pillow, and you suddenly understand the vibe of this gospel. It's not trying to make you feel safe. It's trying to make you feel awake. Even in the dim lamplight of the library, it has that effect. The room flickers again, and you feel yourself pulled back, like a hook catching your belt loop. You're in the locked library room once more, with your knees stiff and your hands resting on the open page. The lamp is lower now. The oil has burned down, and the smoke is harsher, like it's getting tired of being polite. Your fingertips are blackened with ink and dust. You read the last lines you can see on this part, and your mind keeps tripping over them. Judas, not the clueless villain. Judas, the one singled out. Judas, the one who knows. Jesus laughing while everyone else prays. It's the inversion that gets you. Not a small twist, not surprise, different angle. A full, unsettling flip that makes your brain reach for the wall like the room tilted. You close your eyes for a beat, but the images hang there anyway. The cramped table, the smell of oil, and sweat, Jesus' laugh cutting through the prayer like a knife through cloth. You can almost hear the offended murmurs of the other disciples, still clinging to certainty like a life raft. And Judas walking into the night with that tight face, not triumphant, chosen. You turn another page, and the papyrus crackles like dry leaves. The words get stranger as they go, climbing higher into that bright, abstract language. Names for realms you can't picture. Brightness that isn't light. Generations that aren't families. Your eyes start to blur at the edges, not from sleepiness exactly, but from overload. This book is like trying to stare at the sun through a slit in a door. You finally let the page rest, Your hands hover over the open gospel like you're afraid it might bite. Because it's not just that it makes Judas look different. It makes everyone look different. The disciples look like men arguing over the wrong address. The prayers look like misdirected mail. The whole familiar story looks like it's happening inside a bigger, stranger universe that doesn't care about your tidy labels. No wonder some people hated this. Not because it's too weird, because it stares straight at the sacred center and says, you might not even know what you're worshipping. You sit there in the locked room, listening to the faint creak of the building settling. Outside, somewhere far away, a footstep echoes in a corridor. A monk, maybe, a guard, someone doing rounds. You lower your voice without meaning to, as if the walls might report you. Your eyes drift to the next book on the stack. Different title, different trouble. This one looks almost respectable, like it wants to be helpful, which, in this library, is somehow even more suspicious. The lamp coughs and spits, like it's offended you're still awake. The locked room has that late-night stink now, old glue, damp leather, and the bitter tang of oil that's been burned too long. Your lower back complains in a language older than Latin. Your knees feel like they've been folded into a shape the human body never agreed to. You reach for the next book anyway, because your common sense left hours ago. This one doesn't look like it wants to ruin your life. It looks like it wants to improve your posture and get you on a regular prayer schedule. The cover is plain, scuffed at the corners, like it's been passed around a lot, like it's been loved. You rub your thumb over the name, pressed into the skin, the shepherd. That's it. No fireworks, no forbidden gospel swagger. Just a title that sounds like it's about to offer you a warm bowl of lentils and a life lesson. The leather creaks when you open it, not dramatically, more like a tired door hinge. The pages smell faintly of smoke and hands, not perfumed hands. Hands that have been touching fish, rope, and somebody's sick child. The ink is neat, steady, the work of someone who wanted this to survive. And the moment your eyes catch the first lines, the locked library loosens its grip on you. Not with a violent yank, with a slide. The stone walls dissolve into noise. You're outside now, and the air hits like a wet rag. It's Rome. Not the marble postcard Rome. The Rome of narrow lanes and stale puddles, where the gutters are basically decorative and the smell is doing the most. You step around a heap that might be garbage, or might be a goat's entire life story. Flies rise in a cloud. Personally insulted, you disturb them. A cartwheel squeals nearby, and someone curses with the passion of a man who has been losing arguments to wood for decades. Your sandals stick slightly to the street. That stickiness is not from honey. You're moving through a neighborhood where people live on top of each other like stacked pottery. Laundry hangs overhead, dripping onto anyone foolish enough to walk beneath it. A child runs past with something greasy in his hand, and you have no idea what it was before it became grease. And there, threading through the mess, is a man with the posture of someone who has had enough moral instruction for one lifetime. Hermas. He looks like a person who used to be poor, got less poor, and now lies awake thinking about it. His tunic is clean enough to be intentional, but not clean enough to be impressive. His hands have that working man thickness, with small cuts that never fully heal. He walks like he's carrying invisible paperwork. You follow him past a doorway where someone is dumping chamber pot contents with the casual confidence of a society that has given up on surprise. You dodge. Hermas doesn't. He's either lucky or numb. He heads out of the tight lanes towards something greener. Because even Rome has places where you can pretend the world isn't sticky. Outside the crush of buildings, the air gets marginally less murderous. You can smell dirt that hasn't been peed on recently. Hermas climbs a slope, and his breath is loud in his chest. He stops, he stares, and you feel it before you see it, like the temperature changes inside your skull. A presence, not a monster, not a choir. More like the sensation of being called into the principal's office, except the principal is ancient and knows what you did last summer, last decade, and last Tuesday. Hermas drops to his knees because his body knows what his mouth hasn't caught up to yet. And there she is, a woman. At first glance, she looks like someone's grandmother who has survived multiple plagues and still has opinions about your manners. Her hair is white, her skin is lined, her eyes are sharp with the kind of disappointment that doesn't need to raise its voice. She's seated, like this is her spot, like the world arranged itself so she could sit down and judge properly. Hermas looks terrified and embarrassed, which is a brutal combination. He tries to speak, and his voice comes out small. The old woman fixes him with a stare that makes your shoulders tense on his behalf. She starts talking, not in riddles like Thomas, not in cosmic bureaucracy like Judas. She talks like a person who has receipts. She tells Hermas what he's done, what he's thought, what he's wanted to do, and what he's tried to pretend he didn't want. His face tightens. He looks like a man being read aloud in public. You wait for lightning. Instead, she does something worse. She gives him assignments. She speaks about repentance the way a craftsman speaks about sanding wood. Slow, thorough, no shortcuts. Hermas nods too fast, like he's trying to agree his way out of shame. It doesn't work. The old woman stands, and you notice she's holding a book, an actual physical book, not a metaphor, a small codex, worn at the edges, like it's been opened 1,000 times with nervous fingers. She hands it to him. Hermas takes it with both hands, because you don't one-hand something that feels holy and furious. He opens it. The letters swim. Your eyes try to catch them, and the page seems to resist, like the words don't want to be owned. Hermas reads, and the old woman watches his mouth move. When he finishes, she takes the book back. You will write it, her gaze says. Even if her mouth uses different words, you will deliver it. You will not lose it. You will not cheapen it. You will not pretend you didn't hear. Hermas swallows. And then the strangest thing happens. The old woman shifts. Not like she changes outfits. Not like she turns into a bird. She becomes younger. The lines on her face soften. Her posture straightens. Her eyes stay the same. Because judgment doesn't need wrinkles to be effective. Hermas stares at her like his brain is trying to reboot. You can't blame him. You're standing there watching a woman de-age in a field. Like this is a normal afternoon activity. She speaks again, and her voice has more warmth now, but not less authority. It's like being scolded by someone who actually wants you to do better, which is somehow more intense. Hermas nods, blinking hard. Your mind tries to label her church, wisdom, lady with a very aggressive skincare routine. None of the labels stick. She turns and walks away across the grass, and Hermas scrambles after her. His sandals slip once on loose dirt. He catches himself, humiliated. She does not slow down. You follow them, and the world begins to tilt into vision again. The grass underfoot becomes too green, like someone turned the color up. The sky brightens in a way that doesn't feel like weather. Ahead, you hear building, not hammering exactly, more like the sound of stone being set in place, heavy and deliberate. You crest a small rise, and you see it, A tower. Not a finished tower, not a proud monument. A tower under construction, rising up in the middle of nowhere like an idea someone refused to drop. Except the materials are wrong. The tower is being built out of stones, but these stones look alive. Not with faces, thankfully, just with a sense of readiness. Some are square and clean, like they've been cut for this purpose. Some are cracked, some are chipped, some are still damp with mud, like they've been dragged out of a river and brought here without being asked. Around the tower are women, young women dressed in simple white, moving in coordinated calm. They carry stones as if the stones are lighter than they should be. They set them into place with hands that don't tremble. There's no shouting, no arguing about measurements, no one losing a finger because someone tried to lift something with confidence. It's the quietest construction site you've ever seen, which makes it unsettling on principle. Hermas approaches like he's walking up to a courtroom. He tries to speak. A voice answers him from beside the tower, and you jump because you didn't see the speaker at first. An angel, not a cute baby with wings, not a glowing romance cover man. This one has the vibe of a foreman who has never smiled at a joke. He stands with arms crossed, watching the work like he's tracking every stone. Hermas greets him with nervous respect. The angel looks him up and down like he's deciding whether Hermas is structural enough to be included. Then the angel starts explaining the stones. You listen, because you can't not. Some stones are perfect and go straight into the tower. They fit, they hold. Other stones get set aside. Some are too round, some are cracked, some are covered in grime. A few stones look like they've been rejected for crimes you can't see. Hermas watches each stone get evaluated, and his face does that thing people's faces do when they realize the metaphor is about them. One stone gets brought forward, and it's filthy, caked with mud, slick with something darker. The women in white don't flinch. They carry it to water and wash it, scrubbing until the surface shows. The stone looks new, not different inside, just clean enough to be placed. It gets fitted into the tower. Hermas exhales like he's been holding his breath for a year. The angel points out more. A stone gets rejected and tossed aside. It lands with a dull thud in the grass, like a body. Hermas winces. The angel's look says, "You can wince. The tower still needs to stand." Off to one side there are piles of stones waiting. Some look anxious, if a stone can look anxious. Some look like they've already given up and are just enjoying the grass. You can't believe you're empathizing with rocks, yet here you are. Hermas asks questions, because of course he does. He asks about the women in white. He asks about the tower. He asks, what makes a stone acceptable? The angel answers with the blunt patience of someone explaining the same thing for the 1,000th time. Hermas nods, eyes wide, and you can tell he's thinking about his own life like it's a pile of uneven stones. He's thinking about what parts of him are cracked, what parts are muddy. The angel gestures toward the tower again. The tower keeps rising, stone by stone, silent, relentless. And now we arrive at the part nobody talks about. You realize Hermas isn't just going to see pretty visions and go home feeling inspired. He's about to get rules. So many rules. The scene shifts with that familiar lurch, like your stomach drops one step too late. You're no longer on the grassy rise. You're somewhere quieter, shaded. There's a bench, rough wood, and it presses splinters into the back of your legs. The air smells like sheep nearby, lanolin, dust, and the faint sour note of animals that do not respect personal boundaries. A figure approaches along the path. A man, older, with a cloak that's been mended more than once. He carries a staff, and his eyes are sharp but not cruel. He looks like exactly what his title promises, a shepherd. Except you've learned by now that titles are never just titles. Not in these books. The shepherd sits near Hermas like this is a counseling session, and Hermas is the exhausted client who has brought a list. The shepherd starts speaking, and the words come with the weight of instruction. This is not the wild fever dream energy of fallen angels and giants. This is not secret laughter in a hot room. This is, do this, don't do that. Stop lying to yourself. Hermas listens like a man trying to drink from a fire hose. The shepherd talks about truth. He talks about double-mindedness, like it's a sickness you keep feeding. He talks about patience, and you can feel Hermas's soul groan. He talks about self-control in a way that makes you suspect someone in this community keeps making small exceptions and calling it fine. The shepherd warns him about sorrow that's useful and sorrow that just eats you alive. He talks about prayer, and not the performative kind, the kind that changes you in private. Hermas nods, 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 like his neck is going to fall off. The shepherd tells him about two angels, one who encourages righteousness, one who encourages wickedness. Hermas looks alarmed, like he's just realized there's been an invisible committee in his head this whole time, and they've been voting without telling him. The shepherd gives him tests, not puzzles. How do you know which spirit is speaking? One brings peace and gentleness. The other brings confusion and pressure, and a weird urgency that feels like panic, wearing holy clothing. You feel that in your chest because you've met that urgency. Everyone has. Hermas swallows hard. The shepherd keeps going. He talks about the commandments like they're not theoretical. He talks about marriage, money, envy, anger, not in abstract, in that practical way that makes you feel seen. Hermas shifts on the bench, uncomfortable. The wood creaks under him. A fly lands on his forearm, and he doesn't swat it, because when you're being morally evaluated by an angelic shepherd, you don't make sudden moves. The shepherd's tone stays steady. No theatrics, no threats of monsters, just relentless honesty. It's almost worse. Hermas asks about repentance, because everyone wants to know how many times they're allowed to mess up before the door locks. The shepherd answers in a way that doesn't give Hermas the loophole he's hoping for. Not a cruel answer, a serious one. Hermas's shoulders slump. He looks like a man realizing the path is longer than he planned. The shepherd watches him with something like sympathy. Not soft sympathy, the kind you give someone carrying a heavy load, because you know it's heavy, and you also know it still has to be carried. You hear sheep bleat somewhere nearby, annoyed about something. They always are. And in the middle of all this instruction, the strangest comfort settles in. Not excitement, not mystery, structure. Hermas is being handed a way to live that isn't just fear and guesswork. He's being told that the tower rises one stone at a time, and you don't get to skip the washing part. The shepherd stands, staff in hand. Hermas stands too, like the meeting is over, except you can tell the meeting will never be over in his mind. The shepherd leads him along a path. You follow, because curiosity is a leash. The air shifts again, and you find yourself staring at a scene that looks like a parable someone acted out with props. A vineyard. Rows of vines, leaves thick, the ground dry and cracked. The smell is warm dirt and crushed green, sharp in your nose. Workers move among the vines, but their movements are slow, burdened. The shepherd points to a tree near the edge. It's tall, spreading, heavy with branches. And then you see it. Shadows in the tree. People, not hanging, not dead, just perched, clinging, lounging among the branches like they've decided gravity is optional. They look down at the vineyard and do nothing. It's the ancient version of watching someone else do the work while you offer moral support. Hermas's face flushes because he recognizes this energy. Everybody does. The shepherd speaks again, and you can feel the point of it land. Some people are planted in the community like trees, meant to provide shade and fruit. Instead, they just take up space and host freeloaders. Hermas nods, jaw tight. The shepherd gestures toward the branches, and the people up there shift uncomfortably, like they can hear him. One scratches at his hair, another looks away. A third suddenly finds the sky fascinating. Hermas looks like he wants to climb up there and personally apologize to the concept of labor. The scene changes again. You're watching a woman now, dressed plainly, carrying water. Her hands are red from cold and work. The jar looks heavy, digging into her hip. A man approaches her with smooth words and a smile that thinks it's charming. He tries to steer her aside. She steps around him without stopping, like she's dodged this exact man 100 times. The shepherd's voice follows, explaining, and you feel Hermas's embarrassment flare again. Because this book, this very popular, very respectable book, is quietly obsessed with integrity. Not flashy integrity, not die for the faith in an arena integrity, daily integrity, the kind that makes you say no when no one will applaud. Hermas keeps receiving these scenes like blows that don't bruise the skin. The shepherd doesn't let him drift into dreamy spirituality. He keeps dragging it back down to choices, to habits, to what you do when you're tired and hungry and nobody's watching. The sun in this vision doesn't move like real sun. It feels fixed, like a spotlight that refuses to dim. Hermas asks more questions, because he's Hermas, and also because he's terrified of missing a detail. The shepherd answers, and the answers feel like they're meant to be remembered, repeated, copied. You can almost see it happening. You can see a small room in Rome later. A handful of believers packed into it, shoulder to shoulder, breathing each other's breath. Someone reading these words by lamplight, while children fidget and a pot of stew simmers too thin. You can see a man nodding because he needed someone to tell him envy is poison. You can see a woman listening hard because she's been carrying grief like a stone in her mouth. You can see why this book spreads. It doesn't just give you mysteries, it gives you rails. And the rails feel like safety when the world is unstable. The scene shifts back toward the tower again, because apparently the universe of Hermas has a recurring set. The tower is higher now. The women in white keep moving, calm as ever. A stone is brought forward that looks fine at first glance. Then it's turned. A crack runs through it, hairline but real. The stone is set aside. Hermas flinches as if the crack appeared in his own chest. The shepherd speaks near him, quiet. Some cracks can be healed, some cannot, at least not without being recut. Hermas nods, swallowing. Your throat feels dry, like you've been walking in dust. A stone is brought forward that's jagged and awkward, but it's washed, and the jaggedness is smoothed. It fits. The tower accepts it. Hermas's eyes shine with relief, and you hate how much you understand, because the tower doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty. It demands willingness to be shaped. The women in white pass by again, and you notice their hands. They're clean, but not delicate. They're working hands. Their white garments are not fashion. They're uniform. They move like they know exactly what they're doing, which is unsettling, because nobody in your life has ever seemed that certain. Hermas asks again who they are. The shepherd answers in a way that makes Hermas's head dip, like he's receiving something sacred and heavy, virtues, qualities, not floaty ideas, living forces that build the tower. You look at them and think, with a sudden modern bitterness, that you can barely get through a day with one virtue and a granola bar. These women carry stones for eternity. The shepherd gestures toward other figures now, men who approach the tower with confidence. They look polished. They look important. They also look like they've never carried a heavy stone in their lives. They try to interfere. They try to insert themselves into the work. The tower does not care. They are redirected, quietly, firmly. Hermas watches, and you can see him learning something he desperately needed. The work is bigger than whoever wants credit. The tower rises whether you posture or not. Now Hermas is back in his ordinary life, and you can feel the difference like cold air on wet skin. You're in a modest home in Rome. The walls are rough. The floor is hard-packed and always dusty no matter how much you sweep. There's a smell of boiled cabbage that has lived in this room for years. A clay lamp burns with a little halo of smoke above it. Hermas sits with a stylus and wax tablet, trying to write what he's been shown. His brow is furrowed. He pauses, stares at the tablet, and you can almost hear his thoughts. How do you spell tower made of people without sounding insane? He writes anyway. Outside, someone argues in the street. You hear a pot clatter. A dog barks like it's calling in a complaint. Hermas's household moves around him carefully, as if his silence is fragile. He writes the instructions. He writes the visions. He writes the mandates with their blunt edges. At one point, he rubs his eyes hard enough to leave red marks, because he's tired, and this is a lot. He keeps writing. Days pass in the way they do when you're trapped inside responsibility. You see him take what he's written to others, not dramatically. No grand assembly, small groups, quiet rooms. He reads, and people listen like their lives depend on it, because sometimes they do. A man with calloused hands listens and nods, jaw clenched. A woman with a baby on her hip listens with wet eyes, not crying loudly, just leaking in silence. Someone repeats a line under their breath, like they're trying to memorize it before hunger steals it. The book travels. A copy appears in another house, then another. The ink changes, different scribes, different hands, same words. A young man reads it aloud and stumbles on a phrase, then corrects himself, cheeks flushing. An older woman corrects him softly, because she's heard it before. You realize slowly that you're watching a bestseller happen, not with banners and sales tables, with people risking suspicion to gather and hear a book that tells them, be clean inside, not just outside. Be steady, be truthful. Repent like you mean it. It spreads because it's useful, because it sounds like someone actually tried to help, and because it feels safe compared to the other books you've handled tonight. No giants eating people. No child Jesus turning classmates into corpses. No cosmic administrators stamping your soul's paperwork into denial. Just a shepherd with a staff, telling you to stop lying and start building. Your hands itch with the memory of the locked library room. You feel the pages again beneath your fingers. The vision blurs, but before it releases you, it shows you one more thing. Time, not a number, a drift. Hermas's book sits on a shelf in a room you don't recognize, beside other writings. It's worn now. The edges are soft from being handled. A reader opens it carefully, like it matters. He reads a passage under his breath, lips moving. Nearby, another manuscript sits, thicker, stranger, with beasts and horns and sky splitting open. Revelation. The reader glances at it, hesitates, then goes back to Hermas. Because Hermas makes sense. Hermas tells you what to do tomorrow. The scene slides again, and now you're seeing a scriptorium, different from the locked room but related. A long table, reeds sharpened to points, ink pots, a bowl of water gone cloudy with soot and rinse. A scribe bends low, copying lines with patient concentration. His fingers are stained black. His nails are rimmed with grime that never fully leaves. He pauses to stretch his wrist, wincing. Then he keeps going. On the table beside him is a stack of pages, and there it is again. The shepherd. Copied, bundled, included. It sits near other writings people treat like scripture, because for them, it is. You watch hands pass it along. You watch it read aloud. You watch it quoted as if it's an authority that will still be there tomorrow. And then, quietly, without drama, the air shifts. Another room, another shelf, the same book, but now it's set a little apart, like someone moved it without wanting to make a scene. A man in authority, cleaner than the others, well fed enough to show, handles it with polite caution. He flips through, frowning, not at the morals, not at the repentance, at the fact that it's still happening. Visions, angels, instructions delivered like fresh mail. It has the unsettling implication that heaven keeps sending memos. The man closes it, and the closing is gentle, almost affectionate, but he sets it down and reaches for something else. A list. A list is always where the trouble starts. You don't hear him declare Hermas evil. You don't hear him shout heresy. He just doesn't pick it up again. The book stays on the shelf, respected in the way old tools are respected. Useful, familiar, not official anymore. In another place, another reader asks for it and gets a little shrug. Not that one, the shrug says, not for the reading in the assembly. The book remains, but the spotlight moves away. You feel the weirdness of it settle in your stomach like a stone. Because this isn't a villain being punished. This isn't a forbidden gospel being hunted. This is a loved book being edged out of the room like an uncle who tells the same story too often. No fight, no bonfire. Just a slow closing of hands around a smaller set of writings. The vision loosens. The smell of Rome fades. Cabbage, smoke, sweat, sheep. Stone walls return. You're back in the locked library, with the lamp low and the air thick. Your fingertips rest on the open page of The Shepherd, and the ink looks dull in the dimness. Your thumb traces the margin where a reader long ago made a tiny mark. A faint scratch, like a fingernail pressed too hard. Someone cared enough to mark a line. Someone wanted to find it again quickly. You can't help glancing at the stack of other books, the ones that feel like contraband just to touch. And this one, this respectable, practical, beloved little book, sits in your hands like a bowl of plain bread. Not exciting, not scandalous, just steady, which makes the quiet disappearance even stranger, because you can feel how easily it could have stayed. You can feel how many people it held up, like a hand under the elbow when the world was unsteady. You turn the page carefully. The papyrus crackles, dry as dead leaves. The lamp sputters again, and a ribbon of smoke curls toward the ceiling, where it disappears into darkness. Outside the locked room, somewhere in the building, wood creaks. A footstep pauses, then moves on. You keep your hand on the book a moment longer than you need to, like you're keeping it company. A shepherd, a tower, an old woman who becomes young again, like hope with a backbone. A book that was read until it wasn't. You close it softly, and the leather gives that small, tired sigh. On the table, in the low light, it looks less like contraband and more like a friend someone stopped writing to. And on the stack beside it, another title waits, quiet, patient, stubborn as dust. Proof that even when a book gets set aside, it doesn't really go away. And now, as the candle burns low in the scriptorium, you close these forbidden pages, not with a slam, more like a careful, tired fold of the hands. Your fingers are smudged with ink and old leather grime, and your nose has officially memorized the scent of damp papyrus. Somewhere in the building, a door sighs in its frame, like even the wood is exhausted. So after all of that, after angels with boundary issues, secret sayings in desert jars, a child messiah with the emotional regulation of a wasp, and a shepherd handing out commandments like they're overdue invoices, what was all this really showing you? It wasn't one neat secret. It was a whole messy room full of voices. And you felt in your bones how easy it is for a room like that to get reorganized. Because once you've held these books in your hands, once you've seen how different they feel, you stop believing the Bible dropped from the sky already stapled together. You start understanding it the way you understand any shelf of treasured things. Someone chose what stayed in the center. Someone chose what got moved to the edge. Enoch was the first punch to the senses. That book didn't just give you faith. It gave you a universe with teeth. You were standing under a sky where angels could fall, desire could become catastrophe, and forbidden knowledge could spread like mold in bread. It's hard to forget the watchers coming down like a bad decision in slow motion. Hard to unsee giants, born from holy rebellion, treating humans like snacks. Enoch made the world feel crowded. Spirits, judgments, heavenly places with rules you don't know and doors you can't open. And later, you can feel why that kind of cosmos gets simplified. Not because it's boring, because it's a lot to live with. Most people are just trying to survive Tuesday without getting crushed by a cartwheel, not memorize an angel hierarchy. Then you open Thomas, and the whole mood changed. No gore, no spectacle, just sayings, short, sharp, sometimes gentle, sometimes like getting flicked in the forehead. That one felt like being handed a lantern and told, "You figure it out." No miracle show, no crowd management, no dramatic scenery. A Jesus who speaks like he expects you to do the walking yourself. And you can feel why that makes people nervous. Because once faith becomes something happening inside you, quietly, privately, it's harder to manage with schedules and committees. You can't exactly appoint an official to stand behind someone's eyes and make sure they're doing enlightenment correctly. After Thomas, the infancy stories hit like a bucket of cold dishwater. Because people couldn't stand the silence. They wanted the missing years filled in. And what they filled them with is genuinely unhinged. A small child with divine power and absolutely no patience, turning everyday annoyances into disasters. Teachers sweating through their tunics, parents learning very quickly that complaints come with consequences. It sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it also shows you something almost tender under the chaos. People were trying to solve an ache. If Jesus was truly holy, what was he like at the table, on the street, in the dust? What did it look like for the divine to grow up with scraped knees and bad neighbors? The problem is, once you start inventing answers, you don't stop at "he was helpful." You end up with "he cursed a kid for bumping into him." And suddenly everyone agrees maybe we keep this one out of Sunday readings. Then came the Protoevangelium, Mary's strange, sacred backstory. That one had the feeling of a tale told with reverence and nerves. Miraculous birth, temple childhood, a life arranged by vows and lots and watchful eyes. It's the sort of story that tries to protect holiness with layers. More rules, more proof, more ritual, like purity is a priceless vase, and everyone is terrified. Someone's going to smudge it, and it shaped people anyway. Even when it wasn't official, it gave the imagination handles to grab. It gave names and scenes and textures that people carried into prayers, paintings, feast days, and bedtime stories whispered to children. Then Judas turned the whole table over, not with shouting but with laughter. That gospel made you sit in the Last Supper and realize you might not recognize the room anymore. The disciples look confused. Jesus looks calm. Judas, of all people, looks like the only one who got the memo. That's dizzying, because it doesn't just change one character, it changes the whole emotional map. Betrayal becomes assignment. The villain becomes the trusted one. And suddenly, the story isn't comforting. It's slippery. That kind of slipperiness is hard to build a shared life around. You can't gather a community on a foundation that keeps moving under your feet. Not when you're already meeting in cramped rooms that smell like cabbage and fear, hoping nobody reports you. And then Hermas, poor earnest Hermas, walked you back down to the ground. No cosmic romance, no secret elite knowledge, just a tower rising stone by stone, stones judged, washed, fitted, sometimes set aside. Virtues in white moving with the calm efficiency of people who don't get distracted by drama. Hermas felt like the ancient version of someone sliding a rulebook across the table and saying, "This will keep you alive." It's so practical it almost hurts. Repent. Tell the truth. Stop trying to serve two selves at once. Build something that can stand. And that's the heartbreak of it. Hermas wasn't thrown out for being too wild. It was beloved, useful, widely read. It just didn't end up on the final official shortlist. So what does that leave you with? Sitting here in a locked room, candle guttering, air stale with smoke and old decisions. It leaves you with a calmer kind of clarity. The Bible you grew up with isn't the whole attic. It's the chosen shelf. Not a random shelf. Not a careless shelf. A shelf shaped by worship, arguments, comfort, fear, hope, and the very human need for a shared center. Some books made the world too crowded with supernatural chaos. Some made Jesus too quiet and too interior. Some tried too hard to fill silence, and the result was aggressively weird. Some rearranged the heroes and villains until the story couldn't hold still. And some, like Hermas, were so loved they almost made it, then got gently moved aside when almost stopped being enough. None of that means these books are poison. They're not cursed objects that melt your face off if you read past midnight. They're windows. Windows into early believers trying to name what they'd experienced, trying to guard what felt sacred, trying to explain suffering, temptation, power, betrayal, and the ache of waiting for God to act while your lamp sputters and your rent is due. The candle is lower now. The room hasn't gotten kinder, but it has gotten quieter. You came in expecting a simple category, approved and forbidden, safe and dangerous. You leave with something truer and oddly more peaceful, a sense of how wide the early Christian world really was. So you set the books down, one by one, not like trash, like artifacts you survived. And in the dim, you can almost feel the shelf settling into place. Some titles centered, some edged out, some hidden in jars, some carried across deserts, some copied until the ink wore thin. Not everything was chosen, but nothing was completely erased. The wax on the candle crawls down the side in slow, sticky rivulets, and the room holds its breath in the way old buildings do, as if it remembers every hand that ever reached for a page and decided it mattered enough to keep. "Put it out," someone whispers from the doorway. Not because of danger, because the candle is done. and everyone can smell it dying. That last little thread of smoke curls up like a tired sigh, and the room immediately feels colder, meaner. You sit there in the dark with your palms still open, like you're waiting for the weight of the books to come back. Your fingertips have that gritty residue, ink dust, leather rot, and the sort of grime that lives in cracks between boards. Outside, the monastery settles. A distant cough, a shuffle of sandals, a donkey somewhere, offended by life itself. So you do what people always do when they're afraid of words. You try to get rid of them. You can almost hear the routine in your head because you've watched it all night. A superior with a tight mouth, a stern hand pointing at a stack, a bowl for ash, already stained from previous corrections. The physical work of destroying a book is weirdly intimate. You have to touch every page to kill it. You have to feel the raised ink, the grooves where a reed pen dug in too hard, the soft spots where damp got there first. The parchment curls when it meets flame, like skin pulling away from pain. And the smell, oh the smell, burnt oil, hot dust, animal hide turning into a sharp, greasy stink that grabs your throat. It doesn't smell like victory. It smells like somebody ruined dinner and then acted righteous about it. They did all that. They did it with rules, with speeches, with penalties, with that exhausted confidence of people who think a locked door solves everything. And still, somewhere, a hand hesitates. Not dramatically, just long enough to matter. A scribe looks at a page and thinks, this took someone months. Or, my grandmother used to whisper this part. Or maybe it's simpler. I like it. So instead of the fire, the page goes under a tunic, against skin. Warm, sweaty, heart-beating life pressed against ink that isn't supposed to exist. You start to realize how these books survive. Not by winning arguments, but by being carried, folded, hidden, misfiled on purpose, slipped into the wrong stack like a quiet act of sabotage. The kind that doesn't get a monument, just a longer life. And now the room you're in, this cramped, righteous little box, starts to feel smaller than the world outside it, because the world outside is full of hiding places. A clay jar, for instance. One of those ugly, practical jars that used to hold grain or sour wine. The kind you'd kick aside in a kitchen because it's always in the way. You can feel it in your hands, rough, gritty, with a rim that scrapes your knuckles. The lid doesn't seal neatly. It never does. They smear pitch around it anyway, like a desperate bandage. Then you're out in the desert with your sandals filling with sand, and your tongue feels like it's wearing a coat of dust. The sun is rude. The wind is worse. You dig where no one will casually wander, because nobody casually wanders in the desert unless they're lost or haunted. You tuck the jar into the earth like you're planting a seed, except you're planting sentences, and you cover it fast because your hands are shaking, and you keep glancing over your shoulder at nothing. The jar sits there. A year becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. The jar doesn't care. The desert doesn't care either, but in a way that's helpful. Elsewhere, the hiding looks different. Not a jar. A monastery with stone walls that sweat cold at night. A place perched up where the air is thin and your lungs complain like spoiled children. You walk down a corridor that smells like old incense, old soup, and old men who have lived too close together for too long. Someone opens a wooden chest, and the hinges squeal like they're telling on everybody. Inside folded cloth, a bundle of scrolls, a book wrapped like a secret. The ink looks darker there, like it's been fed well. The pages are still scarred with handling, thumb smudges, oil spots, corners bent and unbent 100 times. But it's alive. and in another place it's a cave. Not the romantic kind, the kind that smells like damp stone and bat droppings and that sour note of something that crawled in and didn't crawl out. You duck inside and immediately hit your shoulder on the wall because the entrance is designed by nature, and nature hates comfort. You feel along the rock until your fingers find a crack, a little hollow space behind a loose stone. A bundle is stuffed back there, wrapped tight. Cloth, leather, maybe even a jar again, because people love a jar when they're terrified. You pull it out and the dust makes you sneeze so violently you see stars. That's the absurd part. Empires make decrees, councils argue, priests thunder, and the survival of these words sometimes comes down to one person not wanting to cough too loud in a cave. Back in your locked room, you let all those images stack up around you, not like a lecture, like a trail of footprints across time. Hands hiding pages, feet walking away fast, lamps turned low, breath held. Someone somewhere always decides the risk is worth it, not because they're trying to be edgy, because the words have already gotten into them. That's what no one in the scriptorium can fully control. You can burn a manuscript, you can punish a reader, but you can't unhear a sentence once it lands. You can't unfeel the weird, prickly comfort of knowing the early days were louder and stranger than the tidy shelf suggests. You can't put the imagination back in its jar and pretend it never cracked open. So the banned books keep doing what they've always done. They wait. They wait in dry places and high places and forgotten places. They wait in the backs of cupboards that smell like onions and mouse droppings and old wool. They wait in libraries where the air tastes like paste and dust, and your skin itches after 10 minutes. They wait for curiosity, for loneliness, for the kind of night where the world feels too tight, and you want to know what else people once dared to say about God. And even now, you can feel the quiet continuation. A page turns softly so nobody else wakes up. A line read twice because it hits differently at night. A little shiver of recognition, not because it's safe, but because it's human. The candle is gone. The dark presses in, familiar and patient. Somewhere far from this room, a jar sits cracked open again. Somewhere a monk's careful handwriting still holds. Somewhere a cave gives up its bundle and the dust rises, and a story that was supposed to stay buried moves back into the world. And the conversation doesn't end. It just keeps going, low-voiced, hand to hand, page to page, while empires crumble and shelves get rearranged and the night stretches on. And these stubborn words, smudged, rescued, half forbidden, endure, still waiting to be held, still waiting to be read, still waiting, as they always have, in the quiet hours when nobody's watching and everything feels just slightly more possible.